I'm in the world of Naruto as a civil engineer. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 51, Nagato's battle to destroy the village. Miserable. 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 After reading the intelligence from the Hidden Rock village, Yamashita couldn't help but say the word miserable 3 times. Nagato is worthy of being the leader of the largest terrorist organization in the ninja world today. When doing things, his methods are still very cruel. This guy, not long ago, directly brought several of his puppets and broke into the Hidden Rock village. Different from the attack in Konoha village in the original work, that time, Pain's main purpose was to capture the Nine Tails. Therefore, although it cannot be said that he tried to reduce the killing as much as possible, at least that was not his main purpose. But this time in the Hidden Rock village, the action was different. This time, his main purpose was to kill, so he did not give the Hidden Rock village ninjas too much preparation time. As soon as he broke into the Hidden Rock village, he summoned his several huge summoned beasts and started a bloody massacre. It was not to say that he killed everyone he saw, but it was basically the same. As for the Iwagakure village, because of its own characteristics of being easy to defend and difficult to attack, and because no one had attacked the village for many years, it was caught off guard by Nagato at the beginning and suffered heavy losses. However, the Great Ninja Village is still a great ninja village. After the initial panic, it still organized a considerable resistance force. If their opponent was not Pain, then they might have defeated the enemy. Unfortunately, however, what they are facing now is the strongest ninja on paper in the current ninja world. Needless to say, the result of the encounter can only be summarized in one word: tragic. The ninja interception force led by Huang Tu, the ninja blocking force led by Akatsuki, and the ninja sealing force led by Wenya were almost annihilated. And their results were just to fight off 3 puppets of Pain, and soon after, those puppets were restored to their original state. It means that their sacrifices are completely meaningless. Faced with such an enemy, the ninjas of the Iwagakure village suddenly felt desperate. Anyone who encounters such an opponent will inevitably feel powerless from the bottom of his heart. This is completely a strength in 2 different dimensions, and it cannot be described as there is a gap in strength at all. At this time, the 3rd generation Sachikage, the 2-day scale Inoki, arrived. As the highest combat power in the current Iwagakure village and the longest serving shadow in the entire ninja world, his strength is still unquestionable. As soon as he arrived, he stopped Pain's offensive. After all, he is a man whose name is only one word different from Otsutsuki. Inoki is not only proficient in Earth Escape ninjutsu, but also in the ninja world. There is a unique bloodline elimination, which is even stronger than bloodline limit, the dust escape. This dust escape is powerful and can decompose all matter into atoms. When Pain faced such a ninjutsu just now, he suffered some losses because he did not know its characteristics. However, it was just some losses. The effect of dust release is too clear, and you can see it at a glance. It is not as treacherous as the Flying Thunder God technique, nor as omnipotent as the Impure World Reincarnation technique. It is just a powerful ninjutsu, and there is not much difference from the Fire Release, Great Fireball technique. However, Nagato's 6 Paths of Pain is different. Not only do the abilities of each puppet differ, but they are also very powerful in terms of functionality and power. It is for this reason that Jiraiya, who first fought with Pain, suffered such a big loss at the beginning, and eventually led to the opponent's defeat. If Jiraiya is fully aware of Pain's intelligence, then with his strength, it would not be a problem to solve the 6 puppets by himself. In the final analysis, before the comics entered the later stage, the battles of the ninjas still focused on both strength and intelligence. It is not uncommon to see the first sight of killing in this land. It is very likely that a powerful ninja will be killed by a ninja whose hard power is far inferior to his own. Of course, this is the early stage. After the Gundam is opened in the later stage, all the fancy tricks are basically useless. Of course, Uchiha Madara is criticized here by name. He has become the Jinchuriki of the Ten Tails, but he can still be attacked by Black Zetsu. It is really a shame for Uchiha. Back to the point, the two sides just came into contact, and Nagato suffered a loss, and lost several puppets. However, after figuring out the opponent's tricks, it became more and more handy to deal with the opponent. Objectively speaking, Anoka's strength is very strong, basically the same as Jiraiya, but unfortunately, he does not know Jiraiya's Sage Mode, and his dust release attack is mediocre, and there is no targeted attack method against Pain. Therefore, in the battle with Pain, except for the initial sneak attack that directly evaporated Human Path, Pain could not be restored. He did not have any other achievements. And the more the two fought, the greater the disadvantage of Inoki. After all, he was an older ninja, and he was still unable to maintain his combat capability. So, of course, Inoki was defeated. If the five-tailed Jinchuriki-han hadn't suddenly appeared and saved him, he might have lost his life there. However, as a price, the five-tailed Jinchuriki-han was also captured by Pain, and became the first tailed beast he collected. After this battle, the Akatsuki organization shocked the ninja world. Before this, no one could imagine that there was a person who could single-handedly defeat a ninja village in one of the 5 major countries. You know, a ninja village in a country is the military center of the country. Being able to flatten the entire ninja village by one's own strength also means being able to flatten the entire country by one's own strength. What a terrifying suppression force. Since the Warring States period, after the death of the god of ninja Senju Hashirama, such a thing has never happened again. After this battle, the Hidden Rock village suffered a devastating blow. Except for those who went out on missions or escaped, all the ninjas in the village were strangled to death. Those villagers who had no strength, under the ruthless hands of Nagato, although there were occasional survivors, most of them were killed or injured, which was very miserable. Nagato is worthy of being the leader of the #1 terrorist organization in the ninja world. It is absolutely a very terrifying thing when he really gets ruthless. This also indirectly proves that in the original work, he was restrained at the beginning of his actions in Konoha village, but later because the actions were not smooth, he used Super Shinra Tensei. This is a very natural thing for him. In short, Nagato stepped on the bones of the Hidden Rock village, became famous in one battle, and directly placed himself in front of the desks of all the upper echelons of the ninja world. Chapter 52 Influence. Nagato became famous in one battle, which was not beyond Yamashita's expectations. Now in the entire ninja world, the strongest person is Nagato, who has the Samsara. In the original work, although Nagato was defeated by Naruto in the end, in fact, when Naruto faced the Six Paths Pain, the Heavenly Path Pain had already used Super Shinra Tensei and was in a weak state. And even in such a situation, Naruto turned on the Sage Mode and did not defeat the Six Paths Pain. If Hinata had not helped Naruto later, the direction of the plot might have changed. However, it may not be a good thing for Nagato to expose his strength now. With the ability of those major ninja countries, I believe it will not take long for them to know the location of the Rain country, where the Akatsuki organization is located. At that time, when those countries come out in full force, whether the Rain country can still be as safe and sound as it is now is also an unknown. Although Nagato is very confident that he can challenge the entire ninja world alone, and although there are powerful ninjas such as Uchiha Itachi, Hoshigaki Kisame, and Konan in the Akatsuki organization, and even guys like Black and White Zetsu and Uchiha Obito behind them. However, after all, they are the 5 major countries that have dominated the ninja world for many years. In the Fourth Ninja World War, they were not afraid of those previous ninjas. Yamashita still has to question whether the current Akatsuki organization has the strength to fight against this force. Fortunately, the 5 major countries are not in harmony, and Nagato's attack on the opponent's village this time is fundamentally because the opponent attacked his own country first. In this regard, the Rain country is also tenable. In this way, it is still uncertain whether the 5 major ninja villages can unite to attack the Akatsuki organization as in the original work. The greater possibility is that time will advance in meetings again and again, and finally a decision that no one is very satisfied with will be made. Yamashita was thinking about the possible direction of the ninja world in the future. At the same time, the group walked towards the direction of Shinjan Mountain. The flood discharge area project has been completed, as well as the project for diverting water to the wind country. The next thing they have to do is to open a hole in the belly of Shanjan Mountain to divert the seawater from the rain country to the wind country. This is a big project, and at the same time, it is a delicate job. The mountain of Shanjan Mountain is very hard, and it is very difficult to dig a hole out of it. Fortunately, these construction teams at the foot of the mountain are not ordinary characters, and they have also made corresponding plans when they were in the research institute before, so everyone has no doubts about whether this project can be successfully completed. However, before the construction, Pain came to the scene and called Yamashita Kenji. "What's wrong, Mr. Pain? Do you have any other questions?" Yamashita asked puzzledly. "If it's what you said before about developing the rain country, don't worry, we have sent the company's top planning team, and they will come to our rain country soon. Then we can discuss the development of the rain country together. Don't worry, the team is absolutely professional, and I will personally take charge of this project. I will definitely develop the rain country to be on par with our soup country. In that case, thank you, Mr. Yamashita," Pain said. "But I didn't come here today for this matter." "What do you mean?" "A few days ago, our Akatsuki organization went to the Iwagakure village and caused some damage in the opponent's village in order to retaliate for his previous targeting of us. Although the opponent suffered a loss, with the character of that kind of ninja village, they will never be willing to suffer a loss. So it is very likely that those people will take action in the near future to cause damage in our rain country. I have sent people to guard some important places, but with your construction team always in our rain country, we can't protect your safety very well, and because your project is related to the lifeline of our rain country, you may become their target of attack." Yamashita scratched his head and asked, "So, you mean to ask our construction team to temporarily stop construction and evacuate from the rain country first, and then come back to build after the situation stabilizes? That won't work. Our projects are all proceeding according to plan. A sudden stop will not only slow down the overall progress and cause a chain reaction, but we will also not be able to explain to the workers." "That's not what I meant." Pain shook his head. "What I mean is that I hope you can speed up the development of the project, complete the project in the rain country as soon as possible, and then evacuate." "How can it be so fast?" Yamashita shook his head, then stomped on the ground and said, Look, this ground, is it strong enough? After hundreds of years of wind and rain, this mountain has long been as hard as steel. If we want to dig it through, we need to do it little by little, starting with small digging, and then expanding the excavation results little by little. It's not that easy to accomplish it all at once. Mr. Pain, you think it's simple. Pain touched the mountain, then looked down at Yamashita and said, "I think I should have a way just to get through this ridge in front of us, right?" Yamashita frowned and said, "How do you want to do it?" Pain did not directly answer Yamashita's question, but turned around and said lightly, "Arrange for your people to evacuate first. I'll open the mountain in 10 minutes. Yamashita hesitated a little, but still did what the other party said, and called back all the construction workers. The workers were very puzzled by this. Although the construction period was not very tight, time should not be wasted like this. They were all called together for no reason and there was no reason to talk about anything. Isn't this a waste of time? Mr. Yamashita, what do you mean by calling everyone here? Someone couldn't help asking. Although there was no complaint in his tone, his impatience was evident. This was understandable. Everyone had been in the rain country for several months. Not only was the weather not good, but it had rained for several months in a row. Everyone hadn't seen their families for a long time. It was understandable that they were a little impatient. Look, Yamashita said. At this time, he actually realized what Nagato wanted to do. He stared at Pain, who was standing quietly in the rain with his eyes closed in front of him, and his thoughts were flying in his mind. Then, in the spotlight, Pain's figure slowly flew into the sky. Chapter 53, Pain's Quiet Change. As Pain's figure rose higher and higher, it became smaller and smaller, almost invisible. But the people present focused all their attention on him, waiting and expecting him to do something. Then, in the midst of all the attention, a plain but powerful voice came out, Super Shinra Tensei. There was a moment of silence in the field, and then, in the astonished eyes of the crowd, with itself as the center of the circle, within a radius of more than 10 kilometers, everything, including sand, gravel, trees, rocks, and even rain clouds in the sky, were all affected by a terrifying repulsive force, and repelled out in all directions. The strong wind swept in all directions, accompanied by sand, stones, and dust, and gathered into a terrifying sandstorm, rushing in all directions. This scene was like the end of the world. It would not be an exaggeration to say that he was the collapse of the sky and the earth. This is clearly not something that humans can do. The only one who can do this is God. The people at the foot of the mountain and his construction workers were not hurt because they were far enough away from pain. However, even though they were already dozens of kilometers away, they could still feel the stinging sensation of strong winds hitting their cheeks and sand and stones hitting their foreheads. When the smoke and dust cleared and everything settled, looking at Shanjan Mountain again, it seemed as if something had bitten it, with a round gap. Through this huge gap, they could see the endless yellow desert of the wind country in the distance. A mountain separated them by two worlds of ice and fire, which made people sigh at the ingenuity of nature. At this time, the rain clouds that had been covering their heads for several months also disappeared. For several months, they rarely saw the blue sky and the golden sun that they usually didn't think of anything, but now felt particularly dazzling. The gentle sunlight cast a golden glow, spreading on this land that had not been moistened by the sun for a long time, and it looked shining. And pain in the sky, under the reflection of this sunlight, was extremely sacred, like a god. Everyone was shocked by the strength of Pain, and some people even knelt down and kowtowed to him. Obviously, for them, Pain's unreasonable strength has nothing to do with the word ninja. If you want to use a word to describe him, then the word god should be the most appropriate. Looking at Pain, who was slowly descending, Yamashita felt mixed emotions. Although he actually knew that Pain had such a large-scale ninjutsu in the original work, this ninjutsu even directly destroyed the entire Konoha village. If it weren't for the existence of feelings, Konoha village would have been almost slaughtered by this ninjutsu. Although its power is not as strong as the super large-tailed beast ball of the Ten Tails, it is not far behind, and compared with the tailed beast ball, this ninjutsu is more difficult to resist. In some ways, its practicality is even better than that of the tailed beast ball. However, at that time, he was only watching comics and animations, and its impact was far less shocking than watching it live. This kind of scene was shocking enough even for him, who claimed to have seen a lot of storms. Compared with the other party, he was completely useless except for his first-class escape skills. Of course, he would not be discouraged. Not to mention that he still had the system as a killer. As long as he continued to complete the tasks, he would definitely become stronger and stronger. Just talking about what he had now, the top puppet technique was not worse than the other party's technique. It was just that he might need more preparation time, and could not exert such great power for a while. When he was fully prepared, he believed that in terms of power alone, it would not be worse than the other party, and in terms of practicality, it might even surpass the other party. Of course, that was all later. At least for now, Nagato was still the strongest in the ninja world. However, for such a powerful technique, given Nagato's current physical condition, every time he used it, he would lose his life, so it was not a regular ninjutsu for him. What surprised Yamashita was that Nagato was willing to sacrifice his own life to help them speed up the progress of the project, which he had never expected. From the original work, this technique was used for massacres, to now he was willing to sacrifice his own life in order to make the project go smoothly and let the rain country develop as quickly as possible. The difference is huge. It turned out that Nagato, a young man who was used to seeing dirt and misery, was also changed unconsciously. It seems that his influence on this world is becoming more and more profound. I believe that it won't be long before the entire ninja world will be different because of his arrival and become the same as the world he imagined. After Pain landed from the sky, he didn't say much to Yamashita, but nodded to him and then left directly. After experiencing the initial shock, the engineering team calmed down and began to finish the work one after another. Although the other party did complete the most difficult step, the subsequent waterway connection and channel cleaning still needed them to complete. So in fact, their engineering team still wasted 2 days in the rain country. However, this also greatly accelerated their project progress. If it was in the initial plan, they expected to spend a month to penetrate the mountain. Now it only took 2 days, which has greatly accelerated the progress of the project. At this time, the task progress in his system panel also changed again. Ongoing task, Wind Country South to North Water Diversion Project, completion 41%. Congratulations to the host for exceeding 40% of the project progress. Reward, full level illusion immunity talent. Yamashita was stunned. He didn't expect that the system rewarded him with a talent instead of a ninjutsu this time. As for talent, he had only obtained a talent of negotiation mastery for so long. It was precisely because of his proficient use of this talent that he knew how powerful the talent project was. This talent seems to involve some rules. For the talent, negotiation mastery, it will increase the probability of successful negotiation when negotiating with others. In layman's terms, this talent can also be called mouth to mouth. Different from Naruto's mouth to mouth, which can only be successful after the opponent is defeated. Yamashita's mouth to mouth can be used in any situation. It is precisely because of the help of this talent that he can convince Kakuzu to work for him. With the cooperation of Nagato and the participation of Orochimaru, it is hard to say that there is no intervention of this mouth-to-mouth talent. Chapter 54, Water Diversion Problem in the Kingdom of Wind. With the previous lesson of mouth-to-mouth, the system's gift of all-level illusion immunity is naturally known to him. Judging from the literal meaning, I'm afraid that, as long as he has this talent, he will be able to resist all known illusions in this ninja world. I just don't know if he can be immune to the magic in Boruto Next Generations. But no matter whether he can or not, he has made a fortune this time. With the Flying Thunder God technique, it is basically impossible for ordinary offensive ninjutsu to fall on him. Even if he can't beat the opponent, he can escape through the Flying Thunder God technique, which is almost invincible. However, he knows his own business, and he still has obvious shortcomings. That is the resistance to illusions. Because he has not received orthodox ninja training, everything is directly given to him by the system. Although his strengths are long, his weaknesses are also short, almost none. It would be fine if it was normal times, and the long enough strengths would be enough for him to do whatever he wants. But if someone targets you with a weakness, it would be very bad. It is not an exaggeration to say that you have no power to fight back. Take Naruto in the original work for example. From the perspective of attack strength alone, he has already entered the level of Elite Jonin and even Kazekage. However, if he were to fight against Hatake Kakashi, he might not win 1 out of 10 games. Of course, there is a reason that Kakashi is too comprehensive, but the most important reason is that Naruto's own weakness is too weak. In other words, his resistance to illusions is too low. Although he has learned how to break illusions in theory, he has never broken an illusion by himself in actual operations, and almost all of them have been hit. If Kishimoto had not taken the initiative to give Naruto a buff of full immunity to illusions in the later period, it would be difficult for this guy to play a role in the subsequent battlefield, and it would be almost impossible for him to win the duel with Sasuke. The situation at Yamashita is very similar to that of Naruto. Although he has a good means of attack, once the opponent casts an illusion on him, he will definitely be hit directly. The key is that illusions are triggered by the 5 senses and are basically impossible to defend against. The most representative one is the Sharingan, which is triggered by vision. As long as you look into the eyes of the opponent, you will be caught in an illusion. Yamashita does not have the abnormal fighting instinct of Ake, who can always not look at the opponent's eyes during the battle, but only focus on the opponent's legs. Once he and the opponent are staring at each other, then even if he performs the Flying Thunder God technique as quickly as possible, it is basically impossible to escape. This is what he has always been worried about. However, now it's good. The system directly made up for this shortcoming of his, and it was made up to the top. From now on, in the entire ninja world, no illusion can work on him. In the future, if anyone wants to try to launch an illusion on him, he can let the other party suffer a lot. On the engineering side, because the progress was greatly accelerated, Yamashita directly gave the construction team a few days off. It was too late to go home during these few days, but they could relax in the nearby town of Wind Country. After all, this has always been 007's job. Even if this person is made of iron, he will collapse. If they can take a break, it will also make the future project progress more smoothly. And Yamashita has not been idle these days. Because the progress of the project has been advanced, this side has not yet been connected with the Wind Country. The remaining sections of the project will all be carried out in the territory of the Wind Country. The two sides still need to meet up and discuss the future project plan. Alyosha came in person from the Wind Country, and there were also some people from the Daimyo Prefecture. In the Wind Country, we had divided the plan into two parts. In the conference room, Yamashita distributed the stacks of documents in his hand to the people present. After they started to read the documents, Yamashita continued to speak. As we all know, the problems of the Kingdom of Wind are that there are large tracts of desert that are difficult to cultivate, and the other is that many large-scale projects cannot be carried out due to the extreme lack of water. Because of the geographical environment of the desert in the Kingdom of Wind, it is difficult to retain water. And because of the extreme lack of water, the desert environment has always been difficult to improve. This is a cycle, a vicious cycle. If this vicious cycle is not broken, even if the water from the Rain Country is led to the Kingdom of Wind, the problem cannot be fundamentally solved. Unless, as I proposed before, Shanjan Mountain is directly destroyed, allowing a large amount of water vapor and rain clouds to enter the territory of the Kingdom of Wind, and letting nature change nature directly. In that case, the environment in the Kingdom of Wind will have a real change. Everyone nodded, and Alyosha echoed, the environment of the Kingdom of Wind is indeed special. We once recruited a large number of water-style ninjas, and performed a large number of water-style ninjutsu in a large pit, hoping to build an artificial lake for irrigation of farmland. Who knew that after only a few days, the artificial lake, that was originally in good condition has dried up to the bottom. We in the Wind Country simply cannot retain water. Yamashita naturally knew the reason. Not all deserts lack water. Some deserts are even located on the seashore. However, almost all deserts cannot retain water. In the daytime, under direct sunlight, the evaporation rate in the desert is very terrifying. Without a constant flow of water, it is impossible to store water in the desert for a long time. It is precisely because of this reason that, if we set up the water diversion project on the surface, a large amount of fresh water resources will be lost in the process of diverting water. At that time, even if the water is directed to the destination, the amount of water will definitely not be satisfactory, Yamashita said. Others also nodded. They could naturally think of such things. Now they were not in a hurry to question it. They also felt that, since the other party had raised such a difficult problem, there must be a way to solve this problem. After all, Yamashita Kenji was not a person who liked to shoot at random. Sure enough, after a brief pause, Shanksha took out another piece of paper and mailed it directly to the blackboard in front of everyone. He pointed to a structure on it and said, "It is for this reason that our company has designed a new water diversion system specifically for this environment. This water diversion system can completely avoid the problem of high evaporation in the desert environment and is very suitable for diverting water in such an environment. For this reason, we named this water diversion system, Karas." If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 55 Desertification Control. Karas? Everyone looked at the diagram drawn by Yamashita, and they didn't react for a moment. The principle is very simple. Yamashita Kenji pointed to the diagram drawn on the paper and said, "Since the evaporation of surface water in the desert is too huge, our water diversion project will not be built on the surface, but underground. At a place deep enough underground, we will dig a tunnel and directly pour the water from the Rain Country into this tunnel. Then, Through this tunnel, the water will be transported to various parts of the wind country. Where water is needed, a canal will be built to transport the water out. In this way, the increase in evaporation due to the high surface temperature is avoided. At the same time, because the water source flows underground, some pollution can be avoided. At that time, as long as a vertical shaft is dug at a certain distance to clean the silt and garbage accumulated in the tunnel, the normal operation of the carriers can be guaranteed. Yamashita explained the application of the carriers to everyone in detail, and then he kept silent, waiting for the reactions of these people. It was he who proposed the carriers. In his previous life, he had heard about this miraculous water diversion project, which was the wisdom of the working people thousands of years ago. Although Yamashita did not know the detailed principle of this thing, he still knew the general structure. After telling this idea to the institute, the researchers quickly gave a feasible plan. After discussing many plans, they finally decided on this plan. But, it's really great. After a moment, Eluosha said loudly, with unconcealed joy between his eyebrows. This water diversion system is too important for their wind country. Even without the South to North water diversion project, the design of this carriers alone is enough to benefit their wind country a lot. In the future, if there is any water diversion project in the country, directly borrowing the design of this carriers will reduce a large part of the water source loss in the water diversion process. For their wind country, this is a very valuable thing. Seeing that everyone should be relatively satisfied with this water diversion system, Shanksha nodded, and then continued. Then let's talk about the second issue, which is the transformation of the Wind Kingdom's desert. Although we can already deliver water into the Wind Kingdom with less loss, this is only a temporary solution, and not a fundamental solution. It only solves the problem of water shortage, and major environmental problems have not been changed. If we want to fully utilize the land of the Wind Kingdom, then we must control desertification. Desert control? Eluosha repeated, pondering the meaning behind the two words in his heart. That's right, sand control. Yamashita nodded solemnly, and then said, if you want to solve the current problems of the Kingdom of Wind, sand control is something that must be done. Large tracts of desert will not bring any benefits to the Kingdom of Wind. All they can bring is endless heat and barrenness. Only by transforming the desert environment into normal land can the current situation of the Kingdom of Wind be changed. Eluosha and the others looked at each other, and one of them said, Mr. Yamashita, we all know the problems you mentioned. It is naturally a good thing to be able to change the desert into fertile soil, but that is completely impossible. Even the legendary Senju Hashirama, who performed wood release in this desert, will gradually wither and disappear after a few days. These are things that have been recorded in our ninja village. There is no mistake. The man was obviously very familiar with some of the history of the Kingdom of Wind. He knew that the daimyo of their country once invited the legendary ninja god Senju Hashirama to the Kingdom of Wind to perform wood release ninjutsu in an attempt to use external forces to change the terrain of the Kingdom of Wind. However, the effect was obviously not satisfactory. Although the wood escape of Senju Hashirama did turn a barren land into a lush forest, the soil did not change and was still the original sand. Therefore, after only a few days, all the trees withered. Obviously, without the maintenance of chakra, the trees that exist due to wood escape could not exist in this desert for a long time. The man just heard what Yamashita said, and thought that he still wanted to use the method they had tried before, so he kindly reminded him. So Senju Hashirama has also tried it? Yamashita said with some surprise. Originally, he did have an idea. He wondered if he could borrow Yamato from Konoha to plant trees in the Kingdom of Wind. This kind of thing is indeed easy for a wood escape ninja to do. However, now that the other party has said it, it means that at least at the level of Senju Hashirama, it is unlikely to change the environment of nature by his own strength. But fortunately, that is just an alternative plan. They also considered the situation where there is no wood escape ninja. In other words, even if it was in their plan, the wood release ninja was just a tool to speed up the progress of the project. Whether he was there or not would not affect the final result. Don't worry, sir. Yamashita said, our plan is definitely a masterpiece after many rounds of discussions, and it can withstand scrutiny and questioning. Moreover, we don't plan to complete the transformation of the land of the Wind Country in one go, but to continue for several years. Several years. The man hesitated again. It's not that he didn't believe what Yamashita said, but the time span was too long, and no one had ever done that kind of thing. If Yamashita Kenji hadn't done a lot of miraculous things, he would almost think it was the crazy talk of madmen. Mr. Yamashita, can I ask what your plan is? These papers are too professional, and we don't quite understand. Yamashita nodded, and then wrote a few words on the blackboard. Vegetation reconstruction. Water resources management. Wind and sand fixation. Everyone looked at the 3 words written by Yamashita, and they didn't quite understand what Yamashita wanted to express. Could it be that the method of desert control lies in these 3 words? Mr. Yamashita, isn't your explanation too brief? Although we all know the meaning of these 3 words, can we improve the environment of our country by just doing these few points? Another person questioned. Don't underestimate these 3 words. The desert control plan proposed by our company is based on these 3 words. Yamashita smiled confidently. How could these local bumpkins know the precious experience gained by the predecessors of desert control after countless years of practice in the previous life? Chapter 56 Sacrifice and Dedication. The country where Shanzai lived in his previous life was vast and rich in resources. However, on that vast land, there were many places with very harsh environments. It is not an exaggeration to say that those lands are barren lands. For thousands of years, no one has ever thought of changing them. However, later, when time passed to modern times, things changed. Some people came to this land. They believed in the principle that man can conquer nature and devoted their entire lives to changing those lands that had been desolate for thousands of years into land suitable for human habitation. It is not an exaggeration to call this kind of thing foolish old man moving mountains. The difference is that in the end, Yugong relied on the power of the gods to move the mountain away, and those people really used their own hands to teach a lesson to the desert. This is definitely a great victory that is enough to be recorded in human history. It is an achievement that cannot be erased, no matter how many years it has gone through or what regime comes to power. And in this epic battle, those wise working people have developed many means of sand control. He naturally couldn't remember all the plans, but he still remembered some of them. He gave those few words to his research institute, and soon those people were inspired by these ideas, and gave many specific plans. Sometimes, some things don't progress, because there is no direction. After having a direction, things become much simpler. Seeing that everyone was still a little confused, Yamashita explained to them in detail the role of these 3 directions in desert ecological restoration, as well as the specific implementation methods, including practical plans such as planting drought-resistant plants, building grass grids, digging fish-scale lakes, and building terraced water cellars. When they all frowned and pondered, thinking about the feasibility of this matter, Yamashita waited for a moment, and then continued. The implementation of these plans will not be carried out by us, Yamashita Industrial Company, but by the people of your wind country, who need to build them themselves. Mr. Yamashita, if it's because of money, then you can rest assured that the financial support of the wind country is in place, and we can pay enough money. Ilyusha said anxiously, as if he was afraid that Yamashita would give up on them. Yamashita shook his head and said, Mr. Ilyusha, this can only be done by people from your own country. I have said before that this is a large-scale process. The only thing that can change nature, or can change nature, is time. What we humans can do is just to make a little change in it. That is why sand control cannot be accomplished overnight. It requires years and even generations of efforts. What a single person needs to pay is completely beyond what can be gained in the end. Without strong willpower and unswerving faith, it is impossible to persevere. The people under my command do not have any special feelings for the wind country. Money alone cannot make them make such a great sacrifice. Yamashita paused, then continued, that is why I said that only the people from your wind country can do this. Those who were born and raised here, who have deep feelings for this land, can only endure the depression that ordinary people cannot endure and devote their entire lives to it in order to make this land that nurtured them rejuvenate. I think there should be such people in your wind country, right? Those people were stunned for a moment, then looked at each other, slowly put away the stack of plans in their hands, And Alyosha said, I understand, Mr. Yamashita, let us do this in the wind country. Indeed, this kind of thing can only be done by ourselves. Everyone talked about the details a little bit, and then dispersed. Compared with the project in the rain country, the project in the wind country is relatively simple, but the construction of the carriers is more time consuming, and the technical details are nothing to say. The engineering team is more familiar with the technology, and there is no need for Yamashita to deal with any problems here. In addition, compared with the rain country, the defense force of the big country is still considerable, so the incident similar to the rain country is basically unlikely to happen. Therefore, Yamashita did not stay at the construction site, but wandered around some towns in the Kingdom of Wind, wanting to see if there were any business opportunities that he had overlooked. Coincidentally, this period of time was the day when the 5Kage conference was held. As the Wind Shadow, Alyosha also went to attend the meeting. Compared with the original work, this 5Kage conference was undoubtedly held several years earlier. This is inevitable. After the disturbance caused by Pain in the Hidden Rock Village, the power of the entire ninja world is not a big reshuffle, but it is almost the same. After receiving the news from all parties, there have been ninja teams from major countries active in the Kingdom of Earth. If the third generation of Tsuchika Jinoki was not still alive, everyone was afraid of the power of this old and strong ninja, and I'm afraid that those greedy guys would have already started to attack the Kingdom of Earth. Of course, in addition to the fact that Anoka's strength made them afraid, there was another reason. That is, the guy named Pain really made a group of high-ranking ninjas feel afraid. Therefore, the main topic of this 5Kage conference was how to deal with this man named Pain and the organization he belonged to, Akatsuki. If necessary, they will gather all their living forces to directly eliminate the person who may overthrow their authority. After all, in some ways, the interests of the 5 major countries are the same. The venue for the 5Kage conference is still the same as in the original work, in the Iron Country. It is just unknown whether Raja Hirobito and others will stir up trouble at this conference this time. Yamashita couldn't help but worry about Pain. Although this guy is currently the #1 in the ninja world, his physical condition is there after all. Once the 5 major ninja villages unite, it is absolutely impossible to resist the opponent's ninja torrent with the current configuration of the Akatsuki organization. Speaking of which, one of the main reasons why the Akatsuki organization's lineup is incomplete now is that he is quietly poaching people. This is the case with Jiro, Fiden, and even Orochimaru. Well, in this case, I have to see if there is a way to absorb the entire organization into my company. And just when he was thinking about how to recruit all the members of the Akatsuki organization, a piece of news that surprised him came from the company. Sasuke and Uchiha Itachi meet up. Chapter 57 Attack. Kenji Yamashita was walking towards his company in Unakuni. Earlier, there was news from the company that Sasuke had met his brother Itachi and had a conflict. He had never expected this. He could not understand why Uchiha Itachi would appear in his company at this time. Did the Akatsuki organization assign him a task? Or did the other party think that something might happen to Sasuke when he was there, so they wanted to take Sasuke away directly? After thinking for a while, Yamashita could not find any clues, so he simply stopped thinking about it. Anyway, everything should have a result. After returning to the company, he was still using the Flying Thunder God technique to hurry on his way. With the previous preparation, almost the entire ninja world was now covered with his Flying Thunder God mark. Although he might not be able to teleport, if the distance was too far, it would be no problem if he teleported one by one slowly. It was just a matter of performing the Flying Thunder God a few more times. Whoosh! Yamashita appeared on the top of a mountain. He looked around and then sensed the location of the next mark in his mind. When he was about to continue to perform the Flying Thunder God technique, he suddenly raised his eyebrows and jumped directly to a tree. The next moment, a man suddenly appeared where he was originally. The man held a kunai in his hand and made a thrusting gesture. Obviously, if he had not been sensitive just now, he might have lost his combat effectiveness. Yamashita looked at the guy who suddenly appeared, narrowed his eyes slightly, and recognized the other party's identity at once. Ah, come on, you are really amazing. I was very careful, but you still dodged it. The man didn't feel too sorry for not hitting the target, but threw the kunai in his hand and said frivolously, "I know you." Yamashita thought about it, then laughed, looking at the guy with a spiral mask in front of him, and said, "Oh, really? Then tell me, who am I?" The masked man obviously didn't believe what Yamashita said. In the entire ninja world, only one person knew his identity, and that person would never betray him, so this person couldn't possibly know his identity. Now this person was just bluffing. Achaha. Yamashita deliberately prolonged the last sound, making the other party a little nervous, and then continued, "Obito?" But Obito's mind was shocked. He didn't expect that the other party would actually reveal his identity. But how could this be possible? There was no reason for the other party to see through his identity. It was impossible for him to have a channel to find out his identity. Could it be that Black Zetsu betrayed him? It's impossible. Even the information of this guy in front of him was told to him by Black Zetsu. He had no reason to betray himself. Could it be that the information that the other party gave him before was all false? For a moment, Obito was actually a little panicked. Whoosh! Yamashita suddenly appeared beside Obito, holding a long sword in his hand, and chopped down at the opponent's head. The blade smoothly cut through the opponent's neck, without a trace of blood, as if it was cutting through the air, without the feeling of entering the flesh. Obviously, Obito activated the hollow at that moment, and avoided Yamashita's sneak attack. Of course, the opponent was not completely unaffected. A strand of hair fell from the end of his hair and slowly fell to the ground. Obito retreated again and again, and cold sweat dripped down his back. He was just distracted for a moment, and was noticed by the opponent. If he hadn't reacted quickly just now, that one blow would have been enough to take his life. Step. Yamashita stepped on the ground, threw out a few special kunai from his hand, and chased after him again with the sword, not giving the opponent a chance to breathe. The sword light drew a series of airtight sword nets in the air, covering Obito's entire body, unable to break free, and could only keep him in the hollow state. "It's useless. Your attack can't hit me at all." Obito regained his composure and said calmly, while looking for an opportunity to break through. "Really?" Yamashita swung the sword at the same speed, and at the same time, he couldn't help but taunted. "Obito, Obito, I can already tell your identity. Why do you think I don't know the information about your eye? Your ability to hollow is indeed extremely powerful, but can it last forever?" Hearing this, Obito's pupils shrank. He never thought that the other party would know so much about him. His Kamiu hollow ability is indeed time limited, no more than 5 minutes. If it's longer, he won't be able to hold on. But how could the other party know such a private matter? It seems that you have realized it. Yamashita smiled when he saw the other party like this. "Come, let me see what method you have decided to use to make me retreat." As soon as Yamashita finished speaking, he felt a malicious force coming from his side. Almost subconsciously, he directly, Flying Thunder God technique, left the original place. Then in the next moment, a guy in black and white appeared at his original position, stretched out his hand, and branches grew out of his hand, piercing his original position like sharp spikes. Seeing that the two surviving behind the scenes masterminds in the ninja world appeared in front of him, Yamashita did not have any worry, but looked very interested. After all, with the abilities of these two people in front of him, they simply did not have the ability to leave him completely. In other words, if these two people in front of him were not careful, they might be killed by him directly. However, he did not know why these two people in front of him would actually target him. Was it because he and Nagato were too close? "Wow, both of you are here? I'm really honored," Yamashita said with interest. After these words came out, the two people looked a little strange, especially Obito. Now he didn't trust Black Zetsu anymore. He looked at the two people in front of him warily, as if the two people had done something unforgivable without telling him. Black Zetsu's round eyes narrowed, and he couldn't help asking, "You know me?" "Of course I know you, Black Zetsu," Yamashita said with a smile. "But, are you sure you want me to tell your information here? In front of your allies?" Chapter 58, Encirclement and Killing. Everyone in the room was stunned by what Yamashita said. Black Zetsu was somewhat doubtful. If the information the other party was referring to was his ultimate goal, it would be difficult to say it in front of Obito. But how could the other party know his ultimate goal? In the entire ninja world, there should be no one who knows that thing. Is the other party bluffing? However, when he thought of the other party's previous magical performances and the confidence that he had exposed Obito's identity, Black Zetsu was not so confident anymore. His mind was in a mess, and he was at a loss for a moment. Obviously, Yamashita Kenji, the outsider demon, directly made the biggest behind-the-scenes boss of the ninja world autistic. Obito saw all the hesitation of Black Zetsu. He had doubted Black Zetsu before, and now seeing the other party's performance, his doubts were even greater. Why are you hesitating, Zetsu? Obito asked, is there anything else I don't know? Black Zetsu was even more distressed by what Obito said. He had no choice but to glare at Yamashita fiercely, and then he entered the land. Obviously, the other party didn't want to argue with him anymore, and decided to take him down directly. You are indeed the biggest uncontrollable factor in the ninja world. Obito looked at the other party vigilantly, thinking about the next countermeasures in his heart, and continued, this action against you is indeed a bit misguided. You are not the kind of existence that can be defeated casually. However, it is fortunate that we are not the only ones who came together to kill you today. Yamashita raised his eyebrows, and before he could say anything, he suddenly felt a strong wind blowing on his face, and a big black stick appeared in front of him. Whoosh! Yamashita dodged the opponent's attack again, but before he could catch his breath, he felt a chill on his back again. Almost subconsciously, he flashed again, and appeared in a farther position. The next moment, countless sharp branches appeared from under his feet, as if they wanted to pierce him directly. It was Zetsu who had sneaked into the ground before. Really? Before Yamashita could catch his breath, he suddenly saw a pair of scarlet eyes. Then, he froze in place and stopped moving. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. 4 sounds of breaking through the air rang out, and 4 figures appeared in front of Yamashita. They were Uchiha Obito, Zetsu, Hoshigaki Kisame, and Uchiha Itachi. Obviously, this siege was definitely intentional. Since the conflict between Uchiha Itachi and Sasuke in the Land of Hot Water, the opponent has already laid out a targeted layout for him, and even thought about how to deal with his Flying Thunder God technique. It must be said that these people really have good intentions. Sure enough, in the end, Mr. Itachi is still needed to control this guy, Kisame said with a smile on his face, carrying a huge weapon with barbs on his shoulders. Uchiha Itachi nodded and said nothing. In fact, he had no ill feelings towards the man in front of him. In fact, he even had some respect for him for what he had done in the ninja world. However, he was too close to the Akatsuki organization, and he had no way of judging whether the existence of this man was good or bad for Konoha. Moreover, this man seemed to be more interested in Sasuke and actually recruited him into his company. He had investigated the other party's company, and knew very well how great it was. If Sasuke joined it, then the direction of the other party would be far beyond his ability to guess. It was for this reason that he decided to eliminate such an unstable factor. This guy is too weird. The Flying Thunder God technique he used is even more bizarre than the Fourth Hokage. If we hadn't come prepared this time, we really couldn't subdue him. Obito was sweating coldly thinking about the brief fight with the opponent just now. The opponent knew him too well. When he was suppressed by the opponent before, if it weren't for the assistance of Black Zetsu, it would be hard to say what the result would be. I don't know where he came from. He actually knows so much information. Kisame looked at Obito with some amusement. Is this guy called this name? From the name, it seems that he is also a member of the Uchiha clan, and comes from the same place as Mr. Itachi. I just don't know if the two knew each other before. Uchiha Itachi couldn't help but look at Obito. He had some impression of this clan member. He was Mr. Kakishi's former teammate and the source of Mr. Kakishi's eye. However, this guy should have died in that battle. Why did he appear in this place now? Is there any other conspiracy? Let's finish it quickly, or something bad will happen. Black Zetsu said, and then he stretched out his hand, and pressed it directly on the body of Yamashita who was standing there in a daze. Then, his hand turned into a pool of black water, which directly adhered to the other person's body and slowly wrapped him up. Black Zetsu paused, looked carefully at Yamashita in front of him, and then exerted force in his hand, and punched the other person's head. Bang! Like a watermelon, Yamashita's head exploded directly, but what flew away was not red blood, but something like mud. Is this a soil clone? The 4 people in the field were shocked and quickly dispersed, asking cautiously. No, rather than a clone, this thing looks more like some kind of puppet. Black Zetsu was knowledgeable after all, and looking at the mud scattered all over the ground, he immediately exposed Yamashita's method. But, very good, your eyesight is not bad. You are worthy of it, Black Zetsu. Yamashita's voice came from not far away, and everyone looked in the direction of the voice, only to see Yamashita Kenji, who was in good health, looking at several people with a smile on his face, and said as if he knew them all, Uchihara Bito, Uchihara Itachi, Hashigaki Kisame, and Zetsu, you use such a linoop to deal with me, you think highly of me. I'm afraid that among the ninjas who are still alive, any one of them will basically have no chance of survival, if he faces you guys alone. Even for those who are dead, except for a few, there are not many who can escape from your hands. After saying that, he looked at Uchihara Itachi, looking straight into the other's eyes, without the slightest hesitation. I'm a little surprised that you can come. I was originally thinking about whether I could find a way to save you. Now it seems that I was a little self-indulgent. For you, the best ending is probably to be killed by your own brother, right? Chapter 59, Yamashita Kenji's Strange Ninjutsu. Seeing that Yamashita Kenji was still in this leisurely look, without any awareness of being besieged by 4 people, his heart sank. Since this guy dared to do this, it means that he is confident, and can at least escape from the siege of 4 people. Moreover, the other party dared to look directly into Uchihara Itachi's eyes. He was not prepared for illusions at all. Is there any countermeasure? Thoughts were flying in their minds, and the eyes of several people looking at each other became more solemn. Yamashita over there didn't have so many thoughts. Now in front of him was already the strongest linoop in the ninja world. Even if Nagato stood here, it was basically impossible to defeat the opponent. Being able to escape was already a blessing. However, now facing these people, it was himself. His current strength was very strong. Of course, how strong he was, even he had no idea. These few people in front of him were just right for him to try. What's wrong, everyone? Aren't you coming up? Yamashita said with a smile. If you don't come over, I'm going to go over. After he said that, he clapped his hands on the ground, and a large amount of chakra left his hands, and entered the soil. Then, the next moment, the ground began to tremble, and one by one, mud giants actually rose from the ground, and rushed towards the 4 people. The 4 people were at least well-informed guys, and they would not panic when facing such monsters. However, after a moment, everyone thought otherwise. Those monsters were endless, constantly coming out of the ground, and each of them was very powerful. Although they could not reach the level of elite jonin, they almost had the strength of ordinary jonin. A few jonins made almost no difference to them, but there were hundreds of mud monsters on the scene. Hundreds of ordinary jonins, ordinary ninja villages, even some large ninja villages, did not have such strength. Moreover, these monsters did not only attack with brute force, but also use the 5 escape techniques very skillfully. Although they were all low-level ninjutsu, their chakra seemed to be endless, and they were always performing ninjutsu. What's more important is that these monsters are actually immortal. Whether it's cutting off their heads, or using ninjutsu to burn their bodies, it seems that they have no effect on them. They casually take a piece of mud from the ground and press it directly on their bodies to complete their limbs. For a while, they didn't have any way to deal with these monsters. What kind of technique is this? It's so weird. Kisame was annoyed by these monsters. While splitting a monster into 2 pieces, he followed the others and said, "Don't you have any way? I've never seen such a technique. These things don't seem to be clone techniques. They don't have life, but their flexibility is a bit too high." Uchihara Itachi said, "If there is anything that is very similar to this, the one I can think of is puppetry. But I have never seen such a puppetry before. If I want to do this, I'm afraid that even Scorpion cannot do it. Anyway, if we get rid of that caster, there should be no problem." Uchihara Itachi said, and he went directly to the direction of Yamashita Kenji. Amaterasu was activated, and black flames suddenly burned on Yamashita Kenji's body. However, he seemed to have no feeling at all. He even touched the black flames on his body with his hand and said, "Is this Amaterasu fire? It is really fierce. But why do you think that I will wait here like a target for you to attack me?" Yamashita said, and his body slowly melted and turned into a pool of mud, mixed with the gradually softening ground, spread out, and turned into a black sea of fire. And those monsters also had black flames on their bodies. However, they seemed to be completely unaffected. Instead, Kasame and his companions were more afraid. "Now, this is my world. If you want to defeat me in my world, come and try it, if you think you can." The voice from the bottom of the mountain sounded from somewhere, and it was clearly heard by everyone. "Damn it. Since this is your world, just destroy it." Kasame shouted loudly, and then formed a seal with his hands. The next moment, a terrifying amount of water gushed out of his mouth. Water style, great explosion water wave. The turbulent water rushed out from Kasame's direction and quickly flowed in all directions. In a short while, the surroundings were all wrapped in a huge mass of water, standing in the forest like jelly, which was very strange. The other people were all wrapped in water, but after all, they were shadow level ninjas, so they were not suffocated to death here. And those mud monsters, after leaving the mud, were indeed unable to continue, and were torn into pieces by Kasame's ninjutsu one by one. Is the weakness here? I always feel something is wrong. Uchiha Itachi looked at the mud men that were gradually dispersing, frowning, and always felt that things were not that simple. Then, his expression changed, and he turned his head to look in one direction. At that location, the water flows gradually gathered together to form huge water giants, whose image was exactly the same as the mud giants before. What? The four people were all shocked. They never expected that they had just defeated the opponent's mud giant, and then a new water giant appeared. Could it be that they did not destroy the opponent's technique just now? No. Uchiha Itachi realized that something was wrong and said directly, "The key is not the terrain, but the chakra. Whether it is to maintain the movement of the giants or to perform ninjutsu, it is all chakra." The opponent's chakra did not disappear directly after use, but circulated in this environment, and finally returned to the bodies of those giants. Hearing this, the few people present also observed carefully and immediately discovered such a phenomenon. After the ninjutsu performed by the giants dissipated, the chakra did not disappear, but returned to the giants' bodies as chakra. Not only that, the energy in the air was also constantly gathering into the bodies of those monsters. Although it was slow, their strength was certain. In other words, the longer the current situation dragged on, the more disadvantageous it would be for them. The giants who were originally ordinary jonins have now reached the threshold of elite jonins. How could such a strange and terrifying technique exist in this world? Chapter 60 Terrifying Strength. Hey, did you see it? At this moment, in front of the four people, the water balls gathered together and formed a figure, which was exactly the appearance of Yamashita Kenji. Very perceptive Itachi, you actually saw the essence of my technique. Then, do you have a way to crack this ninjutsu? Uchiha Itachi looked at the other party and said seriously, your technique doesn't seem to be a simple ninjutsu. Yes. Yamashita directly admitted it openly. To be precise, this is puppetry. As soon as this was said, everyone in the field was shocked. Puppetry is no secret to them. There is even a puppetry master in the Akatsuki organization, Scorpion of the Red Sand. However, they have never seen such a puppetry, which not only does not require the control of chakra lines, but even the thing called puppet no longer exists. It can directly control the water and soil in nature. How could this be possible with puppetry? Why, do you think I'm lying? Yamashita looked at the doubtful faces of the crowd and couldn't help but smile, then continued, do you think puppetry can only control the puppets that have been made? No, that's too narrow. Puppetry, to put it bluntly, is just a manipulation technique, which manipulates some dead objects, as if they were living things, as if they were arms and fingers. In that case, why should we limit the objects of manipulation to puppets? In this ninja world, what can't be controlled? Yamashita said this and stopped talking. If he continued, it would involve the core secret of his super high level puppetry, that is, the wonderful use of those magical chakras. A little explanation to let the other party know how powerful his ninjutsu is. That's enough. He is not the kind of arrogant villain who wants to reveal all his secrets. I've wasted too much time on you, Yamashita said, and made a seal with his hand, and then the water giants broke one by one, and the chakra gradually all gathered into a ball. What happened? Such thoughts popped up in the minds of the four people involuntarily. However, in the next moment, their faces changed drastically almost at the same time. Without any hesitation, they fled to the outside world like crazy. Puff, 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 puff. The four people rushed out of the water ball almost at the same time, and after a few ups and downs on the ground, they came to the distance, and then looked back at the water ball with horror on their faces. I saw that the water ball had completely changed at this time. It was no longer round, but turned into a blue giant with complete hands and feet. This giant was wearing armor, and holding a huge axe made of water in his hand. He was like a general who had won every battle, very powerful. How can it be like this? Black Zetsu has been alive for thousands of years and claims to be knowledgeable, but he has never seen such a strange and magical ninjutsu. It's not that this technique is very powerful. To be honest, he has seen more powerful ninjutsu. It's just that this technique is really counterintuitive and anti-ninjutsu. It's really far-fetched to say that it is a ninjutsu. If he had to be given a name, it should be divine art. However, Yamashita did not give them much time to think. He saw the blue giant swinging the giant axe in his hand, and chopped it down with great force. Boom. The dull sound of the collision sounded, and the whole mountain forest was actually shaken 3 times, just like a landslide. A large number of trees were knocked down, and the entire mountain seemed to be turned over. Amid the smoke and dust, there was a vigorous force at the place where the giant axe fell, which blocked the giant axe and slowly pushed it up. When the smoke and dust cleared, a red warrior giant appeared, holding a samurai sword in his hand. It was this sword that blocked the attack of the water giant from Yamashita. Bang! The red giant suddenly exerted force and pushed the water giant back, causing it to retreat several steps. Spectacular, spectacular. Seeing that this was directly the second stage of Susanoo, Yamashita couldn't help but sigh again. The Uchiha Itachi is really a genius. It's a pity that such a person can't be used by oneself. But it's okay. If he sacrificed Uchiha Itachi and had Uchiha Sasuke, he wouldn't be at a loss. After all, if this guy didn't die, Sasuke's manger key would be difficult to open. At least he couldn't imagine any other way to open the opponent's manger key. Although many people in the previous life speculated, and it was also written in the novel, if Uchiha was trapped in the illusion and felt pain in the illusion, it might also open their eyes. But this method, he had asked researchers to try before, and it was confirmed to be ineffective. The condition for opening the manger key seems to be some kind of regular thing. It must be that the person really loses something that he loves and cherishes before he can open his eyes. Before that, even if the person's emotions fluctuate and he is in pain, he will not open his eyes. Let's get back to the point. When Yamashita saw that Uchiha Itachi had even used Susanoo, he knew that the other party was completely serious and couldn't help but said with a smile, "What a majestic giant. This should be your trump card, Uchiha Itachi. Since the history of the Uchiha clan, you should be considered one of the best who can use the technique of Susanoo to this extent. If your body is not so bad, then your upper limit may be far more than that." Uchiha Itachi, among the giants, had a serious expression. He didn't expect that the other party even knew such a thing. Where did this guy get the information from? Susanoo is indeed a very powerful technique. Even the water giant I created should not be able to match this big guy in a head-on confrontation. Although my water giant can be revived infinitely, as long as I continue to fight with you, you will definitely not be able to hold on for long with your sick body. But that's not what I want. Yamashita licked his lips and grinned evilly. At this point in the battle, his body, which had not fought for a long time, slowly became active and enthusiastic, and he became more eager for fighting. The few people in front of him were already the best sparring partners he could find now. In this way, he seemed to be able to try to show more strength. Look, if this is the case, how should you deal with it? Then, in the shocked eyes of Uchiha Itachi, Yamashita slapped the ground with his hands again, and then the ground shook violently. Then, 3 other earth giants as tall as the water giants climbed up from the ground, wearing the same armor, and holding long swords, giant hammers, and spears in their hands. Together with the previous water giant, he actually summoned 4 giants at once. Well, now, let's try again, Yamashita said with a smile in the shocked eyes of the 4 people. Chapter 61 figured it out. Uchiha Itachi and his companions escaped. It was basically impossible for the 4 to defeat Yamashita from the front. On the other hand, it was extremely difficult for Yamashita to keep the 4 people. Theoretically speaking, the ability of ninjas to keep people was very weak. Not to mention those ninjas with similar strength, as long as the difference in strength was not very large, they basically had the possibility of escape. However, most ninjas automatically blocked the option of escape during the battle, so there were so many ninjas who seemed to be evenly matched, and one of them was completely killed by the other. However, in the previous battle, he had already engraved the mark of Flying Thunder God on the bodies of the 4 people. When he wanted to find these guys later, it seemed that there was no problem at all. He waved his hand, and the giants in the field slowly collapsed one by one, and turned into their original appearance. This experiment on his technique was really a complete success. He suppressed the 4 guys with his own strength. Who else in the entire ninja world could do this? Unless Hashirama Senju and Madara Uchiha are resurrected, I can now proudly say that I'm the strongest in this ninja world. Even if these 2 people are resurrected, who will win and who will lose, we will have to fight to know. Yamashita Kenji was stagnant and then shook his head fiercely, throwing the unrealistic idea out of his mind. Really, he was arrogant with a little strength and even thought that he could fight against Hashirama Senju and Madara Uchiha. What is the strength of those 2 guys? Not to mention the enhancements given to them in the later period, just talking about their strength before death. One of them turned into a Buddha and smashed everything for himself, so what is there to fight? So, I still have to hide for a while. After all, my future opponents are not only these guys in the ninja world, but also those Otsutsuki aliens in the sky. If this world is still the timeline of Boruto, then in the future, let alone the strength of the cage, even the strength of Senju Hashirama can barely fight against those aliens. If he remembers correctly, Boruto in the later period has basically mastered most of the ninjutsu in the ninja world and has the Flying Thunder God technique to rely on. He is definitely a top level 3rd generation Hokage. If you count the power of his wedge, he is basically a Senju Hashirama. But even he is dwarfed when facing those guys who use the so-called divine arts. Strength is far from enough. Fortunately, because of his system, there is no difficulty in improving his strength. As long as the construction project is carried out step by step, one day, his strength will reach the ceiling of this world. Just like this puppetry, it is an existence that has never appeared in the entire ninja world. Simply put, the characteristic of this puppetry lies in its special chakra. Anything attached to this chakra will be activated and completely controlled by Yamashita Kenji. It is a bit like the Sage mode of Ryuchidan, but it is fundamentally different. In theory, if this ninjutsu is practiced to the highest depth, it can completely activate and control the entire ninja world planet. At that time, in the ninja world, any energy will be completely allocated by him, and he will be completely invincible. Of course, that is the highest realm in theory. To reach that level, his chakra needs to reach a terrifying level, which may not be achieved by 100 Senju Hashirama. Therefore, now it is more stable to be down to earth. Thinking of this, he did not stay in the same place, but continued to perform the Flying Thunder God technique, and hurried on his way. After a while, Yamashita finally returned to the capital of the Kingdom of Hot Springs. Without any hesitation, he went directly back to the company, and found Sasuke's location. At this time, Sasuke was wrapped in bandages and his right hand was in plaster. It was obviously broken by someone. But even so, he was still in the training hall, punching the special training target in front of him one by one. Even though his fists were bleeding and sweating, he did not stop at all, as if Sasuke regarded the target as his brother. Sasuke. Yamashita walked silently to the side of the child and said, Who? Sasuke's eyes were covered with sweat, but through the mist, he still saw the figure of the person next to him. Yamashita, sir. I'm sorry for your hardship, Sasuke. I completely understand your feelings. Yamashita said, looking at Sasuke's eyes, which had completely changed. I don't know why, but when he heard the other party's words, Sasuke's suppressed pain in his heart suddenly burst out. Ah, woo woo woo. A low sob sounded, and Sasuke knelt on the ground, his body twitching. At first, it was just a small sob, but later, there was no sound at all. He was like a wounded little animal, wanting to vent, but he was exhausted, and couldn't do it. Ah. Yamashita Kenji sighed unconsciously, then hugged Sasuke and patted his trembling body, with complicated thoughts in his mind. From the beginning, he actually kept his distance from the two protagonists of this world, fearing that his intervention would change their fate, and prevent them from reaching the height they should have reached in that period of time. Similarly, for those who should have died in the original work, such as Uchiha Itachi and Nagato, he wanted to change their fate. After all, in his eyes, the enemy of the ninja world is not Uchiha Madara, or even Otsutsuki Kaguya. It's the members of the Otsutsuki clan who will almost certainly come one after another in the future. With the common enemy in the outside world, these petty hatreds in the ninja world don't seem to be that important. But he was still wrong. He himself was the one who stirred up the plot. Even if he didn't come into contact with Sasuke and Naruto, their fate would change with his joining. Now that he has been reborn in this real world, the memories of his previous life can only be used as a reference. If he becomes timid because of those memories, it would be a bit of a waste of time. Think about it again. Sasuke has the potential to be the top in the ninja world, plus the foundation of his own company for so many years. If he devotes all his efforts to cultivate him, his growth may not be slower than in his previous life. As for why Yamashita changed his mind now, it was because he was really touched by seeing Sasuke like this. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 62 Sasuke's Shock. Sasuke, as one of the protagonists of this work, has the same tragic experience as the protagonist Uzumaki Naruto. However, unlike the carefree Naruto, Sasuke's tragedy has a source. That is the rejection of the Uchiha clan by Konoha village. Of course, this does not mean that the Uchiha clan is a White Lotus. In fact, this is actually a dog-bite-dog story. It is hard to say who is right or wrong. But these are meaningless to Sasuke. Because what he knows is that his brother killed his parents and clansmen, and the last meaning of his life is to avenge his parents and clansmen, and kill his most respected brother. However, after all, there is a big age difference between the two, and Itachi is a genius. It is really difficult for him to chase that man's back. These emotions have been suppressed in Sasuke's heart at the beginning. Until now, facing his brother again, he found that the gap between the two did not seem to decrease, but was even bigger. His mentality suddenly lost balance, and he felt that he could not accomplish what he wanted in his life, and he collapsed immediately. To be honest, this is because Uchiha Sasuke is mentally strong. If he were an ordinary person, he would either give up the plan of revenge directly, or commit suicide in grief. However, things should not be like this. It doesn't make sense for Sasuke, a completely innocent child, to suffer such pain. Even if his brother did everything for Sasuke's good, he shouldn't control the other's life like this. It was precisely because of this that Yamashita changed his mind and decided to really intervene in the growth of the two protagonists. Sasuke, Yamashita Kenji said in a steady voice. From now on, you will practice with me. Sasuke raised his head, tears in his eyes, like a helpless child. In fact, in his previous life, he should still be in middle school, and the most he thought about was what games were fun, and how to finish the homework assigned by the teacher. It was already very difficult for him. Mr. Yamashita, your strength. It's not that Sasuke looked down on Yamashita Kenji's strength. After all, he was able to create such a big foundation in this complex ninja world. Just think about it, and you know that he is definitely not a simple businessman. But, after all, he will face that man in the future. He didn't have any idea before, but now, he can break into Yamashita Industrial Company alone, and then retreat unscathed, and even killed and injured so many people. His terrifying strength can no longer be simply described in a few words. Under such a premise, does Mr. Yamashita still have the confidence to teach himself and grow to the point where he can defeat that man? Yamashita seemed to have guessed the other party's concerns long ago. He smiled and then said, "What do you think of your brother's strength?" "Very strong." Even if he didn't want to admit it, he still knew that his brother's strength was very strong and should be no less than that of the Hokage. "So what do you think of my strength?" Yamashita continued to ask. At this moment, Sasuke was speechless. What kind of strength does Mr. Yamashita have? Although he had some guesses, because the opponent had only fought with Hidden in front of him, and that Hidden didn't seem to know any ninjutsu, and his physical skills were completely suppressed by his puppetry. So in fact, in that battle, Yamashita Kenji didn't show much strength. "I remember that I seemed to have shown my ability of puppetry in front of you before, right?" Yamashita said with a smile, and then moved his fingers, and Sasuke felt that his body was moving uncontrollably, posing a very strange posture. What is this? Sasuke was horrified, and quickly used the chakra in his body to resist this uncontrollable feeling, but it was completely useless. He was like a doll, being toyed with by others. After playing for a while, Yamashita also released his control over Sasuke, and said to the other party with a smile, "How is my method? How is this possible?" Sasuke asked in shock. The feeling of not being able to control his body just now shocked him greatly. He had never heard that puppetry could forcibly control the other party's body. This was much more powerful than Shikamaru's shadow imitation technique. The shadow imitation technique made the other party's actions the same as his own, while this one could completely control the other party's behavior. The difference between the two was immeasurable. Moreover, with his eyesight, he did not see that Yamashita Kenji left any chakra lines on his body. It was as if he could do whatever the other party wanted him to do. What kind of terrifying ability is this? It's just some small tricks of puppetry. It's easy to deal with some ordinary ninjas, but it's a bit difficult to use this to control your brother. Yamashita Kenji spread his hands and said, "But if I really want to deal with your brother, it won't be difficult." He paused, then continued, "Not long ago, I fought with a few of them. Is it that man in that organization?" Sasuke thought of the Akatsuki organization that Yamashita had told him before. If he remembered correctly, Yamashita and the Akatsuki organization had a good relationship before. Could it be that the relationship between the two parties broke down directly? Not the Akatsuki organization. To be precise, your brother should have left the Akatsuki organization directly after fighting with me now. Otherwise, Nagato would have killed that guy directly without my help, Yamashita said. He believed that with the relationship between him and Nagato, if the other party knew about this, he would not let those guys go easily. After all, the people in his company are still in full swing in the development of shipping in the Rain Country. Now your brother should be with another Uchiha. Another Uchiha. Sasuke felt that his brain seemed to be insufficient. In such a short period of time, he actually obtained so much information. Are there other Uchiha clans in this ninja world? Of course there are, Yamashita said as a matter of course. Do you think what I said before was just a joke? Seriously speaking, the destruction of your clan was planned by your own Uchiha clan. Chapter 63 The Cruel Truth. Seeing Sasuke's face full of shock and the look as if he wanted to ask more questions, Yamashita said in advance, "I do know something about the extermination of your family, but I'm not very clear about some details. If you want to know more detailed inside information, I'm afraid only your brother knows it. However, what I can tell you is that your brother was indeed the one who carried out the mission of exterminating the family. Although there may be various reasons, there is nothing wrong with you saying that you want to seek revenge on him. Let me be frank with you. A considerable part of the reason for the extermination of your family was caused by people within the family themselves. I myself do not have much affection for your crazy family. It's exterminated, so it is exterminated. If the Uchiha clan did not exist in the ninja world from the beginning, then I'm afraid that a lot of things would have been avoided. So, I don't have such a strong malice towards your brother. I thought before that, if he could come to me, I could give him a good position." Yamashita Kenji's words were very explicit and contained a strong disdain for the Uchiha clan, which made Sasuke feel very uncomfortable. He was annoyed and unconsciously retorted, "You are talking nonsense. The people of our clan are not like that at all." Yamashita spread his hands and said, "I don't intend to convince you of anything. The most difficult thing in the world is to convince others. As for the things that the people in your clan have done, you should have a completely new judgment after you know those things in the future." Sasuke was silent for a moment, then said, "Even if there are some ambitious people in the Uchiha clan, that is not a reason for our clan to be exterminated. Those ordinary clan members, those newly born babies, those children who are still in school, those elders who have participated in the Ninja World War, and those who have made great contributions to Konoha, they should not be killed for such a ridiculous reason." Hearing this, Yamashita was startled. Something seemed to be touched in his heart. All the past events came to his mind, making him feel mixed emotions. After a moment of silence, he smiled bitterly and said, "I didn't expect that I would be taught a lesson by you. What you said makes sense. I actually walked towards some extreme direction without realizing it. Then, thank you." To be honest, although Yamashita Kenji has been in this world for a long time, because of his previous life, he often feels alienated from this world. He treats those who exist in the world as game NPCs. Therefore, even when he killed someone for the first time, he did not feel nauseous as the legend said. It was as common as killing a wild monster in the game. Yes, it was a game. For Yamashita, this is not the real world, but a game world. He is a player in this game world, and his ultimate goal is to reach the top in this world. And the system is just his privilege as a player. However, after such a long time of wandering around the ninja world, seeing the countless people living in the ninja world, seeing their joys and sorrows, anger and sorrow, I don't know when, his mentality has changed. Those people seem to be flesh and blood people. They each have their own wonderful, each has their own story, not the supporting role revolving around the protagonist, but the protagonist in their own story. In the past, the Uchiha clan extermination was just a background event in the story, and there was no one with great personality charm among those who died, so he didn't have much feeling about this matter. However, after Sasuke said this, he unconsciously produced a picture in his mind, that bloody picture to the extreme, that event that can be called a tragedy. Until this moment, he really integrated into this world, and really regarded those people living in the ninja world as real people. However, he still had other ideas about what Sasuke said. "However, I have some other thoughts about what you said." Yamashita looked at Sasuke and said seriously, "Since the surname, Uchiha, is added to their names, they are not completely innocent. While enjoying the convenience of the family, they also have to bear the karma of the family. You say they are completely innocent? In my opinion, not so. They are just paying the price they deserve. Are the babies innocent? Without the protection of the Uchiha, you can look at the babies in the rain country. They may be born in the rain and cold, and lose their parents at birth. Are the children innocent? Without the protection of the Uchiha, they would not be able to go to school at all. They might be sent directly to the mines, and do those jobs that can exhaust people to death in a few days. Are the ninjas with outstanding military exploits innocent? The prosperity of Konoha was indeed exchanged for their youth and lives, but at the same time, they also brought the pain of war to other countries. You can't say that the wars they have participated in were all just. In your eyes, these people exist as a matter of course. But in my opinion, their existence itself carries sin, the sin and cause and effect brought about by the term Uchiha. These sins and causes and effects do not mean that they are unforgivable, but when they die, because of their own family, they should have such awareness. For example, your parents fought and killed others, occupied the other party's property for you to enjoy, and protected you to grow up in a safe environment. You can naturally accept all of this as a matter of course, because those dirty things were not done by you. But one day, when someone comes back for revenge and the butcher knife falls on your head, you should also be prepared to be killed. This is called fairness. This is called the way of heaven. Do you understand? Yamashita looked at Sasuke with a burning gaze, and instilled all the principles that Nagato had told him to him. The indifference in his tone made those who heard it feel cold all over their bodies, and also made Sasuke stand on the spot for a moment, his mind confused, not knowing what to say. Chapter 64 Teaching on Behalf. Sasuke has always been a smart and independent child. In the original work, almost every choice he made was the best choice for him at that time. He was alone, but he was able to go so far in the end, which was an ability of his. However, after hearing what Yamashita said, he was shocked. Although he wanted to refute the other party, he didn't know how to refute it. For a while, he just stayed there. Of course, Yamashita didn't mean to embarrass Sasuke. Seeing that Sasuke was silent, he said, "Of course, this is my understanding as an outsider. You are in the game, and as a party, you will naturally have different feelings. Therefore, I will not stop you from taking revenge on the person you think is your enemy. In fact, strictly speaking, your brother and I should be considered enemies now. So, our interests now should be the same." Sasuke raised his head in a daze, not knowing what Yamashita meant by pulling back and forth. Why did he feel that his emotions were constantly fluctuating because of the other party's words? Silly boy. Seeing Sasuke's confused look, Yamashita smiled, ruffled his hair and said, "Don't think about anything else. Don't you want to take revenge on that guy? Follow me, I can improve your strength. When your strength is improved, it won't be so difficult to do anything you want." Sasuke understood what he said. He knew Yamashita Kenji's strength before, so he naturally had no worries about becoming his apprentice. Forget about becoming a disciple. Thinking of the tradition of killing teachers in the Naruto world, which can be regarded as the law of cause and effect, Yamashita directly stopped Sasuke's plan to become a disciple, and said, "Just think of it as a benefit given to employees by our company. If you want to repay me in the future, just work hard in the company. Forget about Konoha." Yamashita is not a fool. Since he has decided to train Sasuke, he will definitely take him in. If the seedling he has worked hard to cultivate finally returns to Konoha like in the original work, and protects Konoha to fulfill his brother's ideals, then he will be a fool. Although it is difficult to change Sasuke's obsession with his brother, he can change the other party's thoughts imperceptibly, and eventually lead the two to two completely different directions. Well, that's it. From now on, leave your training to me. Yamashita made the final decision. Come on, I'll take you to find a tutor. Your ninja foundation is too poor, and I'm not very good at it. It just so happens that I know a very powerful ninja. If he trains you in the early stage, the effect should be better. As he said that, without waiting for Sasuke to react, Yamashita took Sasuke away directly. Orochimaru Laboratory. This is a laboratory specially opened for Orochimaru by Yamashita Research Institute, dedicated to Mr. Orochimaru's research. Although this Orochimaru has just arrived, his ability in scientific research has been revealed, which has amazed everyone in the institute. For such a person, everyone also respects him very much. Now in the institute, the name of Biochemical Twin Walls has been vaguely circulated. This name represents the two genius research talents Orochimaru and Sanzu Amado. Yamashita Kenji brought Sasuke to the door of the laboratory, knocked on the door and walked in. Orochimaru was standing in front of a transparent jar with a mass of flesh and blood inside. Beside him, Kabuto Yakushi, who was wearing glasses, was writing something down with a pen and paper. "Mr. Orochimaru, how have you been adapting these days?" Yamashita came forward to greet him warmly. "Not bad. I didn't expect Mr. Yamashita to have time to come over to my place." Orochimaru looked at Yamashita Kenji and squinted his eyes unconsciously. For some reason, he felt that the person in front of him seemed to be very different from before. Although it had not been long since they last met, he could feel a vague threat from the other person. It was an instinct from the soul that was hard to explain. "I mainly want to thank Mr. Orochimaru. If it weren't for you and Kakuzu, the company's losses would have been several times greater. If it weren't for Uchiha Itachi who came to the company. Although their company's defense is very strong, it is still not enough compared to a bug-level ruthless person like Uchiha Itachi. If it weren't for Orochimaru and Kakuzu who showed up in time and joined forces to repel Uchiha Itachi, their company's losses might have been even greater. It's nothing. After all, I'm also very interested in that guy Itachi." Orochimaru licked his lips and said. He was indeed very interested in Uchiha Itachi. Since he was defeated instantly by the opponent's illusion before, he has been brooding over it. He has a great interest in the bloodline limit of the Sharingan, and has his own speculation on its possible later evolution. If he can get some cell tissues from Uchiha Itachi, it will also be a very important thing for his research. Of course, the idea is of course good, but later, he still failed. Uchiha Itachi's strength is indeed very terrifying. Even if he and Kakuzu join forces, they can only barely avoid being at a disadvantage in front of the opponent, let alone injuring the opponent. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but think of his own hands and the souls of the first and second generations of Hokage that had been sealed. If he was still at the peak of his strength and summoned the two with the impure world reincarnation, the outcome of this battle might have changed directly. It seems that the research on Shiki Fujin should be put on the agenda. No matter what the reason is, it is a fact that you protected the interests of the company, and this thank you is worth it. Yamashita said. It's up to you. Orochimaru said indifferently, then turned his head to look at Sasuke who had been silent, and said with a smile, I think you came here. It should not be just to say thank you to me, right? I can't hide it from you. Yamashita smiled and led Sasuke out. I think you should know this child. Of course, I'm very curious about this child. That's even better. This child is considered an employee of our company. I promised him before that I would let him improve his strength in the company, but I have limited knowledge of some basic ninja skills. It happens that you are one of the 3 ninjas, and your ninja skills are very comprehensive. I hope you can train him for me for a period of time and let him learn from you. I don't know, do you agree? Chapter 65 to letters. Orochimaru had been very interested in Sasuke from the beginning, and now that he had been sent to him, he naturally had no reason to refuse. Well, let's do this, Sasuke. You will study here with Orochimaru first, and when I'm done with this period of time, I will bring you back for more advanced training. Yamashita said to Sasuke. Mr. Yamashita, there is no need to be so anxious. I still like this kid very much, and I will pass on all my life's learning to him. Orochimaru said with a smile. Yamashita looked at Orochimaru meaningfully and said, Mr. Orochimaru, I hope you don't forget the promise you made when you joined the institute. Your reincarnation technique can only be used on clones developed by the institute. It's best not to use it on Sasuke. Otherwise, both of us will look bad. Orochimaru narrowed his eyes and then said, Mr. Yamashita is really heartless. He was so easy to talk to just now. Why did he suddenly change his face now? If you always follow the rules, then of course I will smile at you. But from your attitude just now, it seems that you don't follow the rules so much. Yamashita said. Orochimaru looked at Yamashita for a moment, and didn't say anything else. Well, that's it, Sasuke. Yamashita said to Sasuke. Just study here with peace of mind. I'll leave first. As he said that, he patted Sasuke's shoulder, and left some of his chakra on Sasuke. Although in the original work, Sasuke who followed Orochimaru not only did nothing, but also killed Orochimaru in the end, even if there was a reason for Orochimaru's planning, at least at the time, when Sasuke killed Orochimaru, Sasuke's strength was significantly higher than Naruto's. Of course, this does not prove that Jiraiya's level of teaching students is worse than Orochimaru's. After all, Sasuke's Sharingan plugin has always been positive, while the nine-tailed fox in Naruto's body often interferes with Naruto's own development, and it takes several years to adapt and offset this influence. Take the battle between Naruto and Nagato as an example. Although it seems that the power of the nine-tailed fox saved Naruto's life in the end, if it is really said, it is because of the existence of the nine-tailed fox that Naruto was forced to that point. From the beginning of the battle, it is obvious that Naruto's strength in Sage Mode is higher than that of the weakened version of Pain. In Sage Mode, he solved 5 Pains in a row until the time of Sage Mode was over, and then he was controlled by Tendo Pain. It is conceivable that, if Naruto's Sage Mode is infinite like Jiraiya, then he may not be taken down by Pain in the end. The reason why Naruto's Sage Mode cannot last is because of the existence of the Nine Tails. The Nine Tails, while raising Naruto's upper limit, also lowers his lower limit. Back to the point, for the sake of insurance, he still divided some chakra to Sasuke to protect his safety. After doing these things, Yamashita left the laboratory. President Yamashita, this is a letter from Konoha, and an invitation letter from the Hidden Cloud Village. As soon as he returned to his office, the staff handed him 2 letters. Yamashita looked at the 2 letters on his desk with some surprise, and was very surprised. It was easier for him to understand that Konoha village sent him a letter. After all, the relationship between the two sides was not bad, and there was also the Inoshikacho team who was interning in the institute. But what about the Hidden Cloud village? After thinking about it, Yamashita opened the letter from Konoha village and slowly began to read it. It was discovered that the letter was written by Tsunade, the current Hokage of Konoha village. In addition to congratulating the company on the completion of the project in Rain Country, there were also some words about the news of Akatsuki organization and the intention to continue the cooperation with the third Hokage that had been unsuccessful before. Obviously, Konoha village also knew about the changes in Rain Country. Seeing that Rain Country is now developing rapidly in shipping, and there is a trend towards the trade hub of the three countries of Earth, Fire and Wind, the country is becoming increasingly prosperous. As the largest country in the ninja world, Fire Country is also a little restless, so it contacted Yamashita Company. After all, from the information they have obtained, it can be known that the operation of Rain Country is now basically operated by the staff of Yamashita Industrial Company. If it is a coincidence that the development of the richest country in the ninja world, Soup Country, is a coincidence, then the revitalization of the barren Rain Country proves that this company, or more precisely, Yamashita Kenji, has the ability to turn decay into magic. Since they already have such judgment, if the Land of Fire still has a little bit of pursuit, they will definitely contact Yamashita Kenji. It just so happens that their deceased third Hokage once signed a letter of intent with Yamashita about the development of Konoha village, but it was delayed because of the death of the third Hokage. Now, it is just right to bring up this matter again and promote cooperation between the two. Yamashita has no opinion on this. The deeper the connection with these big countries, the more deeply rooted the position of their Yamashita Industrial Company will be. In the future, if anyone wants to destroy the project of Yamashita Industrial Company, I'm afraid that many big countries will be willing to help them deal with things. With a calculation in mind, he put down the letter and then picked up the letter from the Land of Lightning. To be honest, Yamashita really didn't have much contact with the Hidden Cloud village in the Land of Lightning before. What he knew was just some information from the original comics. In his impression, this is not a very peaceful ninja village. At least in the original comics, they have done many things that made Yamashita grit his teeth. It is for this reason that Yamashita does not have a good impression of this country and this ninja village. Therefore, apart from going to their capital to lobby the daimyo about becoming a daimyo, he has no other contact with them. Now the other party suddenly sent an invitation letter, which is indeed meaningful. Looking at the exquisite patterns on the invitation letter, he waited for a moment, then directly opened the invitation letter and read the contents. After a moment, his eyebrows raised, and a smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. He did not expect that the Hidden Cloud village would have such an idea. In short, the content of this invitation letter is to invite researchers from Yamashita Industrial Company to the Hidden Cloud Village Research Institute, to exchange and learn in the name of exchange and study, and to exchange scientific and technological matters with each other. Chapter 66 The next project. The village of Kumogakure is considered to be one of the villages that attaches more importance to technology in the ninja world. If Yamashita remembers correctly, in a movie, the moon was about to hit the ninja world because of the Otsutsuki clan on the moon. This kind of event that can be called the destruction of the world. Konoha sent Naruto to the moon to solve the problem, and the Kumogakure took out the moon cannon, intending to blow the moon to pieces with one shot. Well, the power of this weapon has far exceeded the technological level of Yamashita's previous life. Before the technological products of Yamashita Industrial Company became popular in the ninja world, most of the household appliances in the ninja world also came from Kumogakure. So, if we talk about the strength of the village, then Konoha village is undoubtedly the most powerful. However, if we rank according to the level of technological development or the development potential of the ninja village, then the top of the list must be Kumogakure. It is precisely because of this that the rise of their company has caused the greatest loss to Kumogakure. In the final analysis, although Kumogakure attaches importance to technological development, it is all relative. Their main focus is definitely on the training of ninjas. Moreover, in the early stage of development, their research was very rough, and for Yamashita, it was just a grassroots team. Therefore, Yamashita's company, which has a more scientific research process, management process and talent reserve, soon surpassed them and occupied most of the market share. Under such a premise, the meaning of the research invitation sent by the Hidden Cloud Village to him is worth pondering. Is this not to poach his own employees? He is completely assured of the loyalty of his employees. It's not that those people are so loyal to him, but that the treatment he gives them is something that other ninja villages and countries in the entire ninja world cannot give. After all, this ninja world is still a world controlled by ninjas. Any ninja village will definitely focus most of its energy on the training of ninjas. These researchers may get good treatment in the early stage when they switch to other ninja villages, but because the village does not have the ability to continuously attract talents, it is unlikely that a single researcher will be able to produce outstanding research results in a short period of time. Once the time is extended, it is not certain whether the researchers can still get the treatment they were promised before. After all, in the ninja world, a contract is no different from a piece of waste paper. Yamashita knows this simple truth, and the researchers are also aware of it. However, this time the other party invited their researchers to study and research together, and there is no intention to force them to stay. In the country of soup, it is not well known and difficult to snatch people, but if the other party goes directly to their sphere of influence, then things will be much simpler. For this reason, Yamashita did not intend to accept the invitation of the Hidden Cloud Village. If you want to compete, you have to come with real swords and guns. Yamashita will never accept any tricks behind the scenes. After putting down the 2 letters, Yamashita began to think about the next project of Yamashita Industrial Company. This South to North water diversion project has entered a stage of stable development. All the problems and difficulties have been solved. Now the task progress on his system is improving every moment. As long as the previously planned projects are completed, the project will be completed. He does not need to bother to do it himself. Then, what he has to consider next is the choice of the next project. Of course, this project does not refer to a project like the reconstruction plan of Konoha Village. The amount of work is too small. For him, it is just a piece of candy, not a feast at all. What he wants to do is a huge project like the South to North water diversion project that can change the lifeline of a country or even the entire ninja world. In fact, according to his conception of this ninja world, he still has a lot of projects to do. Take the wind country for example. With the long-term strong winds, a wind power station or a solar power station can be built on it to cope with the upcoming electrical age. Similarly, public transportation in the ninja world is too scarce, and their company's chakra train has basically reached a mature stage. Therefore, building a railway network throughout the ninja world seems to be a good project. The huge cross-sea bridge connecting the hot spring country and the water country, with the hot spring country as the hub, together with the huge power grid of the entire ninja world, etc. These are all huge projects that he has conceived and is determined to build. Of course, there is another one, that is aerospace engineering. Although developing aviation technology seems a bit abstract in the world of ninja world, where superpowers are everywhere, and time travel is as easy as drinking water, it is something that Yamashita has decided to do from the beginning. After all, he always understands that the biggest crisis in ninja world is not in this world, but outside the world. Whether it is the Otsutsuki who may be fighting on the moon, or the goddess of Mao who is sealed inside the moon, or the Otsutsuki clan who are planting trees all over the universe, and may discover the existence of ninja world at any time, these are more threatening than any other forces in ninja world. These extraterrestrial forces are more difficult to monitor than the forces in ninja world. Moreover, according to Yamashita's idea, staying in ninja world and waiting for the arrival of opponents is really a stupid way. As the saying goes, if the enemy can go, I can go too. Since those Otsutsuki can come to invade, they can naturally go back and destroy their layout in the universe. There is a return, which makes them have the possibility of winning in this battle. Of course, the aviation technology he wanted to develop was not like the one in his previous life. That was too slow and did not conform to the tradition of the ninja world. What he envisioned was a spaceship with the ability to shuttle through space. As long as the coordinates were known, the device could directly lead the people in the spaceship to jump through space. This was naturally not a fantasy. With the existence of ninjutsu such as Flying Thunder God Technique and the powerful space-time ninjutsu, Yoizumi Hirasaka, it proved that at least through the medium of chakra, there was a great chance to realize such a concept. However, these were still only in the theoretical stage. Although he had indeed divided a special project team to study this project and told those people all the principles of Flying Thunder God Technique, it was still a long way from the results. Perhaps it would take several years of research to achieve the level he envisioned. But he was not in a hurry. It would be a bit weird if such a killer weapon was really so easy to develop. Chapter 67 Yamashita Kenji's speculation. He wrote down all the projects on paper, thought for a moment, and circled one of them. Ninja World Joint Power Generation and Power Grid Laying Plan. In the end, he chose this project. In fact, electrical appliances have basically been popularized in some big cities, and some small power stations and transmission networks have also taken shape. However, these are just prototypes, and have not been laid out on a large scale. Most cities in the ninja world do not have electricity, and they still use some primitive facilities. With the strength of Yamashita Industrial Company, it is entirely possible to use the Kingdom of Soup as a hub to build a huge power grid covering all major countries, regions, and cities in the ninja world, and to build power stations in different places according to local conditions. There are two main reasons for choosing this project. One is that their company's electrical equipment has gradually been laid out in the ninja world. If they want these things to reflect their true value, then things such as insufficient power supply and power outages should be avoided as much as possible. With the current power grid in the ninja world, it is very difficult to do this. Instead, it is better to do it yourself and promote the ninja world to enter the electrical age. Secondly, this project is not inferior to the South to North Water Diversion project in terms of scale, but it is much less difficult. It can be regarded as a way for the engineering team to do a simpler project after completing a more difficult project. Of course, this project will not start immediately. After the previous project is completed, the workers will be given a half-year vacation to let them rest and recuperate, and then start again. Anyway, according to the timeline of the comics, it should be shortly after Sasuke's defection. There are still a few years of peace in the future, so it is completely in time for development. Although the timeline may change because of myself, I think those ambitious people will not be so anxious to move after my training. At least they will not act rashly without the certainty of completely defeating me. Let's deal with the company's affairs first. Yamashita stayed in the company for a long time this time, dealing with the backlog of affairs during this period. At the same time, he sent people to Konoha village and Kumogakure village to reply to letters and tell them his decision. Now that he is a daimyo, he can speak more confidently and not care too much about other people's faces. In addition, he used this period of time to strengthen the company's defense and left some of his chakra in the company. If anyone dares to attack the company headquarters like Itachi did this time, he should be able to give that person a big surprise. A puppet that is not weaker than the second stage Susanoo and can recover infinitely and is not affected by any illusions. If there is no super shadow level ninja, it should not be a problem for a guy with this strength. In fact, he couldn't do such a delicate operation of chakra before, but not long ago, there was a breakthrough in the project in the Wind Country, and he was rewarded again. Ongoing mission, Wind Country South to North Water Diversion Project, completion 51%. Congratulations to the host for exceeding 50% of the project progress. Reward, Chakra Complete Control Talent, another innate skill. Although this skill doesn't sound very powerful, after Yamashita learned about it, he found that this skill seems to be equally amazing. The main thing is that this control of chakra is complete control. For ordinary ninjas, after turning chakra into ninjutsu and throwing it out, it is basically out of their control. It is extremely difficult to control ninjutsu again. Moreover, they can only perform ninjutsu according to the established routines, and cannot completely control the form of chakra into ninjutsu. Just like Sasuke's Chidori, the derived ninjutsu, including Chidori Blade, Chidori Style, etc., are actually adjustments and manipulations of the Chidori ninjutsu form. This is what ninjas call a chakra form change. According to the original work, the most complete form of chakra form change is Rasengan. Because it is too perfect, it is quite difficult to add property changes to it. However, in fact, in the ninja world, there is another kind of form change. Although this change may not be as perfect as Rasengan, it is definitely more powerful than it. The most representative one is the ninjutsu that comes with the main Gekkai Sharingan, Susanoo. Although it is not explicitly stated in the original work, at least in Yamashita's understanding, that big thing should also be some kind of extreme form change. However, the requirements for the control of the form change of this technique are too evil, and ordinary people can hardly do it. Only ninjas with the main Gekkai Sharingan can use this blood limit to control this power. Of course, if you have already reached the extreme control of the chakra form change, then even without the main Gekkai, you can summon Susanoo. Uchiha Madara once did this in the Fourth Ninja World War, and his complete control of chakra is actually the control of the extreme form changing property change. In other words, as long as you want, you can start driving the Gundam directly now, and you can also add some property changes to the Gundam to increase its power. However, now my chakra amount is only at the level of Kage, which is a bit of a drag. Of course, these chakras are enough to deal with ordinary ninjas, and as the progress of the project progresses, I think the system should also make up for this shortcoming. It is precisely because of this extreme control of chakra that Yamashita Kenji can keep part of his chakra in the company, and when it is critical, there will be a solution to the problem. Just like the part of the 4th generation's chakra sealed in Naruto's body. After finishing these things, Yamashita's work became easier. Every day he just looked at the routine management of the company, and then went to the research institute to see if there were any new technologies developed, and by the way, he checked on Sasuke who was being trained by Orochimaru. Such an easy life made Yamashita a little dazed, and he gradually relaxed. If those ambitious people didn't make trouble, then his easy life should last for a long time, right? Think about it, because of Nagato, his thoughts don't seem to be so extreme, and the Rain Country is developing very well. I think for him, collecting the tailed beasts shouldn't be so urgent, right? Does this mean that some of the plots of Shippuden will not happen? Chapter 68 A New Wave. Although Yamashita Kenji cherished this leisure time, this is the world of Naruto after all. Even after Naruto and Sasuke teamed up to solve Kaguya Otsutsuki, there was only a dozen years of peace, and then the ninja world fell into greater chaos. Therefore, when Yamashita was resting, it was not so surprising to get such news. The Dark Night Forest is suspected to have a strong chakra fluctuation, and the traces of the battle at the scene are comparable to the riot of the tailed beasts. Yamashita looked at the information handed over by his men and frowned involuntarily. What is this plot? Why don't I have any impression at all? This Dark Night Forest is a forest bordering their Soup Country and the Sound Country. Why the forest is called this name is no longer traceable, but according to legend, there is a demon beast in this forest. Anyone who dares to spy on the secrets of this demon beast will be eaten directly by it, which is very scary. Of course, after Yamashita came to power, he also sent powerful ninjas to explore it. In addition to some wild beasts, there was nothing else worth noting. How did this happen again? Did I forget some plot again? Unfortunately, there are really no useful ninjas around him now. Kakuzu was sent to the Land of Rain to manage some preliminary financial affairs, and he was reluctant to use the talents in the research institute, especially Orochimaru. Compared with his fighting ability, Yamashita still thinks that it is much better for this guy to be a scientist. There are really too few people. Yamashita sighed. There are indeed too few ninjas under his command. I think I should think of a way to recruit some more powerful ninjas. In the original work, what other powerful ninjas are there? It seems that Scorpion of the Red Sand is not bad, and his puppetry is better than his opponent. It should be relatively easy to trick him. Deidara is also very talented, but I don't know if he is still alive after Nagato made a fuss in the Hidden Rock Village last time. Well, there shouldn't be any problem. After all, that guy is very powerful. As long as he doesn't have a cramp in his brain and goes to fight, there shouldn't be any problem in saving his life. Of course, there is also Naruto who follows Jiraiya on his journey, and Gaara, whose relationship with his father has eased. These are people who deserve his attention. Of course, that's all for the future. Now, he can only go and see it himself. Although it's okay to send someone to check in order to avoid causing any unnecessary losses and give himself something to do during this free time, it's just right for him to go there in person. Between the continuous flashes, it didn't take much time for Yamashita to come directly to the edge of the Dark Night Forest. This made him sigh again that the Flying Thunder God technique is so practical for traveling. He went directly to the battlefield, mentioned in the intelligence, and found that it was indeed as the intelligence said. The traces of the battle were terrifying. The most conspicuous thing is the deep ravine, which is like a giant of 100 feet, chopped in half with a knife. The surrounding trees are all blown away by the airwave, and even the roots are pulled out of the soil. Its power can be seen. Yamashita looked at the traces that seemed very familiar, and was a little stunned for a moment. Is this the trace of a battle in Susanoo? Someone from the Uchiha clan and an Uchiha who opened the manger key fought with someone unknown in this place. But how is this possible? In Yamashita's impression, at this stage, there is only one ninja in the entire ninja world who can cast Susanoo, and that is Uchiha Itachi. In addition to him, even Uchiha Obito cannot cast Susanoo because he only has a single-eyed manger key. Did Uchiha Itachi fight with someone in this place? But that should be impossible. Yamashita has seen Itachi's Susanoo. Even if his body is excluded, it is definitely impossible to create such a horrible battle mark. This level of cracks, Yamashita estimated that only the perfect Susanoo can do it, right? Thinking of the perfect Susanoo, Yamashita thought of Uchiha Madara. So far, only that guy should be able to perform the perfect Susanoo, right? However, according to the timeline, that guy should be lying on the board now, right? Could it be that the Tomb Raider Kabuto Yakushi dug up Uchiha Madara's grave in advance? Yamashita frowned, always feeling that this matter was full of weirdness. Moreover, he didn't know what the situation of the two sides of the battle was now. If it was really a crazy person fighting in the town within the territory of their soup country, how much damage would it cause? Mr. Yamashita Kenji. At this time, a surprised and happy voice suddenly came from behind Yamashita. He turned around and saw that the person who called out his name was the yellow-haired Naruto and the white-haired Jiraiya. Why are you two here? Yamashita said in surprise. He knew that Naruto and Jiraiya were traveling in the ninja world at this time, but he didn't expect that there would be such a coincidence that the two of them happened to travel to this place and he ran into them. TSK, isn't it the lecherous immortal who insisted on going to Yutang Town in the land of hot springs to collect folk songs, but ended up? Naruto rolled his eyes and was about to complain about his teacher, but Jiraiya covered his mouth directly, interrupting his words that were about to expose Jiraiya's past. Then, Jiraiya smiled and said to Yamashita Kenji, "Hey, Mr. Yamashita, what a coincidence. You also heard about the abnormality here, so you came here?" Yamashita also looked at the disrespectful Jiraiya helplessly. He knew what the old guy meant by collecting folk songs, especially coming to their hot spring resort Yutang Town to collect folk songs. His mind was also obvious. In particular, after Yamashita's guidance, Jiraiya seemed to have opened up his Renandu meridians. He launched several masterpieces in a row, all of which were not suitable for children, and directly shocked the ninja world. From a well-known literary giant in the ninja world, he was promoted to the only literary master in the ninja world of course. These were the names given to him by his male readers, and in the eyes of those female readers, this guy was a big pervert who disrespected the elderly. According to legend, someone has left a reward in the underground gold exchange to take down the head of Jiraiya, the shameless man. Of course, some like-minded people have also left a reward, hoping to invite Jiraiya to a banquet to discuss some literary matters together. In short, Jiraiya's name is completely famous in the ninja world, and it is the kind that surpasses the previous generations of Hokage, which is quite famous. Legend has it that Tsunade has already planned to eliminate this guy from the ranks of Konoha ninjas. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 69, A Man Who Shouldn't Exist in This Era. Kenji Yamashita took the two to a restaurant where they ate and talked about the recent situation. Since Sasuke left with him, Naruto felt a little bored in the village, so he asked Jiraiya to travel in the ninja world while practicing. These days, the two happened to travel to the territory of the Kingdom of Hot Springs. Just when they wanted to experience the famous special services of the Kingdom of Hot Springs, they felt a huge vibration coming from the direction of the forest. When they hurried outside to check, they saw a shocking scene. A terrifying giant who was like a sky-shaking giant, holding a samurai sword in his hand, with a destructive momentum, chopped the sword down fiercely and cut it on the ground. Then, it was like a dragon turning over. The earth was shaking wildly, the land plates squeezed and deformed each other, and the trees fell down one by one. The surging airwaves came like a tidal wave, blowing many people directly backwards, and blown far away. This devastating momentum shocked even Jiraiya, who had been through many battles. What kind of power could cause such a devastating result? More importantly, the huge armored warrior seemed to be attacking a person flying in the sky. The sword did not hit the person's body, but after the sword fell, the person went upstream and came directly to the top of the giant's head. He threw something in his hand and broke the giant's head. The whole giant collapsed and disappeared. This is what Jiraiya and Naruto saw. Until Jiraiya felt that the matter should be settled, he came to check the situation and happened to meet Yamashita Kenji, who also came to investigate the situation. Hearing the other party's description, Yamashita frowned even deeper, thinking about the possible possibilities. The giant was obviously Susanoo, and it could cause such great damage, and had a complete warrior form. This was definitely a complete Susanoo. However, as mentioned before, during this period of time, only Uchiha Madara was known to be able to perform the complete form of Susanoo, but that guy couldn't appear now. What's going on? Moreover, there is another person who can directly break Susanoo with just one blow. Even in the late period of the Fourth Ninja World War, the Six Paths Madara at his peak state seemed unable to do it so easily, right? Was Jiraiya's description exaggerated? Or did he miss something? During this period, gradually, Yamashita seemed to grasp a certain thread in his mind, but it was vague, and he didn't grasp it completely. So, Mr. Yamashita, are there really such powerful ninjas in this world? Such terrifying ninjutsu? For some reason, Naruto always had great confidence in Yamashita Kenji. He felt that Yamashita should know some things that Jiraiya didn't know. Just like now, Yamashita came back to his senses from his thoughts, then replied with a smile, "Of course there is such a ninjutsu. Moreover, this ninjutsu is some kind of bloodline limit, and this bloodline limit comes from your Konoha village." Naruto widened his eyes with an unbelievable look, turned his head, and looked at Jiraiya, and saw that the other party also looked confused, and then he became even more curious, and asked again and again, "Mr. Yamashita, what is it? Is there such a bloodline limit in Konoha village?" "Of course there is," Yamashita Kenji replied, "and you are very familiar with this bloodline limit. It is the Sharingan possessed by the Uchiha clan in your Konoha village." "What?" Naruto said in shock. He didn't expect that this ninjutsu actually came from the Sharingan. Doesn't that mean that Sasuke can also perform such a ninjutsu? How can it be that easy? Yamashita said with a smile. This ninjutsu is called Susanoo. Even in the 1000-year history of the Uchiha clan, only a few people can use this powerful ninjutsu. Sasuke is indeed very talented, but it is nothing but a pipe dream to say that he can directly perform this ninjutsu. Is that so? Naruto returned to normal. He didn't know whether he was secretly happy or felt sorry for his friend. "Mr. Yamashita, is what you said true?" Jiraiya, as a high-ranking official of Konoha, did not know this information, which made him doubt the information. "Of course," Yamashita said, "the traitorous ninja in your village, Uchiha Itachi, has performed that ninjutsu before. Although it is not as exaggerated as you described, it is also very difficult to deal with it." Uchiha Itachi, Sasuke's brother? Naruto murmured. He didn't expect that Sasuke would face such a powerful ninja in the future. No wonder he was so stressed all day long. No matter who it is, having such an enemy, it must be very stressful, right? Jiraiya actually wanted to ask something else, but seeing that Yamashita seemed to be thinking about something, he did not continue to disturb him, but thought about the value of this information to Konoha village. After all, Uchiha Itachi was a traitor to Konoha village. If the other party really mastered such an ninjutsu and came back to the village like Orochimaru, the current Konoha village could not withstand such a destruction. When the atmosphere was somewhat silent, Yamashita felt something in his heart and turned his head to look at the door of the restaurant. Just at this time, the door was pushed open and two people walked in from outside the door. One of them had black hair and a cold face, as if he was keeping people away from him, with an extraordinary demeanor. The other was a little kid, who didn't look much older than Naruto, with a childish face, and seemed to have a sense of novelty in everything he saw. A flash of lightning flashed through Yamashita's mind, and all the previous things were strung together in his mind. Those unreasonable and problematic places seemed to have disappeared directly, and his thoughts were basically all straightened out. He said before that in this period, in the entire ninja world, only Uchiha Madara could use the perfect Susanoo, but he is already dead, which is a dead end. However, that premises that it is in this period. If the world is postponed, then in the ninja world, there is indeed another person who can use the perfect Susanoo. That is the indifferent man in front of him. Chapter 70 Sasuke's Shock. The two looked around the whole tour and stayed on Naruto and Jiraiya for a long time. The child showed a happy expression and was about to shout something, but was stopped by the man next to him. He took the other person to the side, sat down, and ordered food. Jiraiya obviously noticed the two people coming over. The temperament of the cold man was too special, and the momentum was very strong. It was not a simple character at first glance. It's strange, that person looks like Sasuke. Naruto scratched his head and said a little confused. Yamashita Kenji rolled his eyes. He didn't expect that Naruto, a brat, didn't recognize his son, but was so familiar with the grown-up Sasuke. Yes, Yamashita has recognized the identities of the two people. That is the grown-up Uchiha Sasuke and Naruto and Hinata's son, Uzumaki Boruto. From the timeline, these two should be from the period when Boruto and other New Age ninjas were active more than 10 years after the Fourth Ninja World War in Naruto. Yamashita had not watched this plot systematically. Most of what he had watched was some film and television clips and some jokes from people who were just having fun, so he did not know the plot of that period very well. However, what he knew was that during the period when Boruto was reborn, the opponents they had to deal with in the end were aliens from the Otsutsuki clan from outer space. Almost every one of these people was as strong as Kaguya Otsutsuki, the final boss in Naruto, and most of them had much more combat experience than Kaguya. Even Uzumaki Naruto and Uchiha Sasuke in their perfect form would have a hard time resisting them. If he remembered correctly, before he traveled through time, the plot of the comics had already reached the point where Sasuke and Naruto were controlled, and an unknown person performed a skill called divine art that was far stronger than ninjutsu, causing the perception of people in the entire ninja world to deviate, and they recognized Boruto as a traitor and pursued him. To be honest, if the plot design is reasonable, then this should be a pretty good plot. However, at that time, Yamashita was already past the age of reading comics, and he also had a filter for Naruto. He didn't want to see those seniors become stepping stones for the growth of the juniors, so he didn't read it. And now, at this time, these two guys appeared in the ninja world, which means that these two people should have traveled through time and space. There are indeed means of traveling through time and space in the ninja world. Naruto has also traveled through time and space and came to the past. And now these two people should have come to the world they are in now for some reason. I just don't know who the person fighting with the other party is. Is he an alien from the Otsutsuki clan? That man's strength is very strong. Jiraiya looked at Yamashita with a serious face and whispered to the other party. Obviously, he has discovered that Sasuke is unusual. This is of course inevitable. Uchiha Sasuke, who has reached the maximum level, should be able to single-handedly brush the entire ninja world at this stage of course, that is without his own existence. Don't worry, I know these two guys, they are not bad people. Yamashita straightened his clothes and then stood up. Let's go and get to know them. On the other side, Boruto and Sasuke were also talking in a low voice. Teacher, why don't we go over there? That kid should be the father, right? He looks stupid and not smart at all. Boruto did not show any respect for his father in his words and looked at Naruto as if he was looking at a little fool. Sasuke nodded in agreement and said, yes, your father was a big fool when he was a child. Only on this matter, he agreed with Boruto. Teacher Sasuke, who are the two people next to my father? It seems that no one in the village has ever seen them. Boruto asked. Sasuke said, the white-haired man is your father's teacher, one of the 3 ninjas of Konoha, Jiraiya the Toad Sage, a great ninja who sacrificed for Konoha. As for the young man next to him, I don't know him either, and Naruto didn't tell me either. I think he must be some unknown person they met during their journey, right? As soon as Sasuke finished speaking, the unknown person in Sasuke's mouth came over with a smile and sat next to the two of them, looking at them. Hello, both of you. How do you feel about being here for the first time? The two were stunned. They didn't expect this person to be so familiar and just came over to greet them. Who are you? Sasuke asked in doubt. Yamashita pointed to the sky and said, I'm the boss here. You can call me Yamashita Kenji. Is that so? In this way, things made sense. As a boss, it was natural for him to entertain customers. Not bad, boss. Your food is really good. I have never eaten such exquisite food. Boruto said with a smile. The food in this small shop is completely different from what he had eaten before, which made him enjoy it very much. Then I wonder if you two are here for something? Yamashita asked with a smile. Sasuke frowned and said, boss, your words are a bit abrupt, right? Really? Yamashita Kenji pretended to be suspicious. You two made such a big fuss in my country of soup. Don't I even have the qualifications to know the reason? Sasuke was stunned, then stood up cautiously and squinted at the other party. He actually misjudged him. Could this guy in front of him actually see his unusualness? Is he an enemy? Or is he simply investigating the previous battle? But I think there should be no ninjas worth his attention in this country of soup. Don't be so nervous, Sasuke. As my employee, you treat your boss like this. Aren't you really afraid that I will make things difficult for you? Seeing that the other party called out his name directly, Sasuke's heart was even more shocked. How could this person know his identity? And what did the other party mean? Did the other party know me when I was a child? But why did he have no impression of the person in front of him at all? Thinking of this, it seemed that the small town of the Kingdom of Hot Springs was indeed strange everywhere during their journey. The prosperity outside the town and high-tech products were everywhere, which was not inferior to the Konoha village many years later. But how could the Kingdom of Hot Springs develop to such a level more than 10 years ago? Chapter 71 Theory of Crossing Under the Mountain. Just when Sasuke was doubting his life, Jiraiya and Naruto came over, looked at Yamashita Kenji who was calm and composed, and said, Mr. Yamashita, is there a problem? Of course there is no problem. Yamashita said indifferently. Come on, Naruto, go out and play with this kid. The adults have something to say. What? Naruto looked at Boruto with dissatisfaction, and then said, Mr. Yamashita, I'm no longer a child. I'm not interested in such a kid who has not even grown all his hair. Besides, why are you wearing a forehead protector from Konoha village? How come I have never seen you in Konoha village? Boruto's mouth twitched, and he was a little speechless about his father when he was a child. This guy seemed a little too arrogant, right? Hey, don't be so arrogant. Who do you say is a kid? And whether I'm a ninja from Konoha village has nothing to do with you. Boruto said in a very impolite way. Oh, you are quite arrogant. Of course I have to take care of the fact that you pretend to be a ninja from Konoha village. And you are still not convinced when I say you are a brat. Did I say something wrong, weak guy? Haha, why do you feel so strong? Stop kidding, arrogant guy. It seems that you are very unconvinced. What do you think? Let's go out and find a place to fight. Let's try it. Do you think I'm afraid of you, an arrogant guy? Let's go. Let's go. So, everyone watched the two brats, who were just a little taller than the table, walk out of the restaurant face to face and shoulder to shoulder. I think, outside, the two should experience a shocking battle. I hope Naruto will not be pinned to the ground and beaten by his own son. Otherwise, it will be too interesting. The strangers had left, and Yamashita naturally relaxed more. He pointed to a chair beside him and asked Jiraiya to sit down. Then he said to Sasuke opposite him, "Okay, the two little guys have left. Sasuke, can you tell us the purpose of your visit this time?" Sasuke? Jiraiya was shocked. Looking at the man in front of him, he could indeed see some similarities with Sasuke from the other's eyebrows. But how could this guy be Uchiha Sasuke? Shouldn't that child be in the capital of the land of hot water now? However, he was a man who had seen many storms after all, so he did not directly express his doubts, but looked at the Uchiha Sasuke in front of him. "So that's the case. Have you recognized me?" After coming back to his senses, Sasuke also restored his previous indifference. Since the other party had recognized his identity, there was no need for him to hide it. "You are not a simple character at first glance. You are definitely not an unknown person. But what I don't understand is why there is no trace of you in the future?" Sasuke did not answer directly, but raised his own question. "Is there no trace of me?" Yamashita touched his chin and then said, "In this case, your time travel should be to a parallel time and space." Parallel time and space? Obviously, Sasuke did not understand what Yamashita said. Seeing that the other party did not understand, Yamashita dipped his hand in water and drew a straight line on the table. "Generally speaking, our world is slowly moving forward with the passage of time. If there is no accident, no one should be able to go back to the past. Of course, there is no absolute in the world. Because of some accidents, some people may be able to go back to the past by chance. And this return to the past, there are two forms. One is to go directly back to the past of the time period to which you belong, and the time you experience is the time you have experienced before." As he said, Yamashita drew another line from one end of the straight line, turned a corner, and connected to the other end of the straight line. This is the easiest to understand, going back to the past. Of course, such direct time travel will cause various problems, such as the grandmother paradox and so on. When you change some things in the past, will you in the future still have the opportunity to travel back to the past, like you do now? And if not, your existence itself is a paradox. Therefore, this leads to another way of traveling through time. As he spoke, Yamashita drew several parallel lines below the straight line, and then continued to explain. "This theory holds that there is not only one timeline in the universe, but countless timelines with different progress. Each timeline has a ninja world. These ninja worlds may be different from each other, but the general development should be the same. And your time travel is actually jumping from one timeline to another timeline." As he spoke, Yamashita drew a connecting line between the two parallel lines. Then, he spread his hands and said, "Look, this is what I understand. Your time travel is not to return to the past, but to another parallel time and space. In your world, I do not exist, but in our world, to be frank, I'm a very important person." After Yamashita finished this set of theories, he kept silent and waited for the two to digest this information. Fortunately, neither of them was stupid, and it didn't take long for them to figure out the theory that Yamashita said. Jiraiya looked at the adult Sasuke in front of him with some surprise. "So, is this guy the Sasuke in a certain time and space? He seems to be stronger than himself. The Uchiha clan can be regarded as having a successor." After listening to what the other party said, Sasuke was also a little relaxed. After all, he was able to tell him such a thing, so he should not be very hostile to him. This is of course normal. After all, he has just arrived in this world. It would be strange if someone shouted and killed him directly. "So, you should be able to trust me now, right? You can also tell us who you were fighting before." Seeing that the other party seemed to have relaxed his vigilance, Yamashita asked his question again. After all, if the person in front of him is not an enemy, then obviously, the person who is fighting the other party must be an enemy. And the guy who can fight with the perfect Sasuke is obviously not a simple guy. Sasuke said with a serious face, "That person is called Otsutsuki Urashiki." Chapter 72 Countermeasures. As Sasuke told the story, Yamashita and Jiraiya also knew what Sasuke and his friends had experienced. In short, Otsutsuki Urashiki from the Otsutsuki clan accidentally found the lost treasure plot of the Otsutsuki clan in the ninja world. This thing can travel through time and space, so he planned to travel through time and space to Naruto's childhood and harvest the nine tails from his body when he was weak. Sasuke and Naruto followed each other to this time and space. After a battle, Sasuke was defeated and hid. These things are not much different from what Yamashita expected. The guys who can fight with Sasuke now are probably those aliens. In this case, it is not easy to deal with. The opponent is a guy from the Otsutsuki clan. Even if his strength is not as good as Kaguya Otsutsuki at her peak, it is not far behind. With the overall strength of their current ninja world, they really can't resist such an opponent. Of course, the premise is that I don't count myself. However, even with his current strength, whether he can fight the opponent head on is still unknown. Although his puppetry is very powerful, the final destination is still chakra. And the people of the Otsutsuki clan know best how to devour chakra. In front of such a person, the immortality of his puppet may be useless, and the threat of the puppet itself will be much reduced. Jiraiya on the other side opened his mouth wide, as if he had heard a myth, and could not speak for a long time. What did he just hear? Aliens? The Otsutsuki clan? The ancestor of chakra? Kaguya Otsutsuki? These information that had long been lost in the long history were placed in front of him, making him a little unacceptable for a while. In the next 10 years, will the ninja world undergo such terrible changes? Then what are these traditional ninjas? In his heart, there are countless questions that he wants to ask, but seeing that Yamashita is still in a leisurely state, Jiraiya still resisted the intention to ask, and waited for Yamashita to say something. I roughly understand. That is to say, there is a person in the ninja world, who is probably the strongest in the whole ninja world, and he is taking action. And his action target is likely to be all the tailed beasts including the nine tails, right? Yamashita sorted out Sasuke's words and then concluded. Sasuke nodded, and at the same time carefully looked at the person in front of him, and found that the other party was still calm, and not panicked at all. Is it that the other party did not realize the strength of the opponent he might face, or is it that the other party has enough confidence and confidence to deal with the member of the Otsutsuki clan? Sasuke found that he was a little unsure of this person in front of him who he had never seen before. That is indeed a tricky thing. Although he said so, Yamashita did not show any panic expression, but continued to say calmly, in this case, why don't we directly find the cages of each village and let them form a joint army to fight against that guy together? How about it? Do you have the ability to gather those cages together? Sasuke asked with some disbelief. In their world, the 5-cage conference was held after the Akatsuki destroyed Konoha village. The countries felt the pressure from the Akatsuki organization, so they were forced to hold it. But even so, the conflicts among the countries could not be completely reconciled. If it weren't for the intervention of Uchiha Obito, the 5-cage conference would probably have been left unresolved. And now, the other party wants to hold the 5-cage conference, based on a piece of news that has not been confirmed. This matter is a bit too much. Ahem. At this time, Jiraiya coughed twice, and then looked at Sasuke with a strange expression, and said, this person really has such ability. Let me introduce you again. This person is a daimyo of the richest country in the ninja world, the founder and chairman of the first company in the ninja world, a great capitalist who has project cooperation with many major countries, a person respected as a permanent friend by many countries, and the richest man in the ninja world, Yamashita Kenji. Jiraiya's series of names introduced Sasuke a little confused, and he looked at the young and excessive person in front of him in disbelief. This guy actually has such a status in the ninja world? Isn't this a bit too outrageous? In their world, even Naruto, who later became the Hokage, didn't seem to be treated like this, right? Where on earth did this mysterious guy come from? Low-key. Yamashita Kenji looked like he was low-key, but he was actually very happy. This Jiraiya was good, he could get along, and when he was needed, he would really help out. Even he himself didn't know that he could be called so many names. That won't work either. Sasuke refused again. To be honest, at that level, the role of ninjutsu is very limited. Against a guy like that, even if you have more ninjutsu, it will be useless, and will only increase casualties. At that level, even a cage level strongman can only play a very limited role, not to mention those Chunin and Jonin. Hearing this, Yamashita nodded, thinking that Sasuke's consideration was very reasonable. If the opponent really caused large-scale casualties, then even if they defeated the opponent, it would be a miserable victory, not a real victory. And don't forget that in their world, there is a high probability that there is also a Rotsutsuki Urashiki. If they use all their resources to deal with the alien visitor, then they may not be able to resist the one in this world. That would be a loss. So, the best way is to gather the strongest forces in the ninja world and let these people unite to fight against each other. Jiraiya interrupted at this time. Although the topic they talked about was a bit shocking, if it was true, it would indeed be a major crisis in the ninja world. He couldn't pretend not to know about this matter. Forget it, Mr. Jiraiya. Who knew that at this time, Yamashita Kenji directly refused. I thought about it, the top masters we can find are very limited, and the other party may not believe what we say. In this case, it is better for us to solve this matter ourselves. Do we have the strength? After seeing the aftermath of the battle between the two, Jiraiya was not very confident in his own strength. Almost, and I also thought of another person. I think that person should be able to help. Chapter 73, The Brain Under the Mountain. Pain saw the people in front of him, and heard what they said to him. He always felt that he was being bullied as a fool. He looked at Yamashita Kenji and said, Mr. Yamashita, do you think I look like a fool who would believe what you just said? Yamashita shrugged and said, although the matter is indeed a bit too shocking, in fact, it is like this. No, ask your master. Jiraiya next to him has not recovered from his shock. He never thought that the ruler of the Rain Country today is his former disciple, Yahiko. Moreover, the other party's eyes are clearly Nagato's Samzurari. What's going on? For no reason, he thought of the story of Kakashi and Uchiha Obito. Did something happen to Nagato? Yahiko, why are you here? And Nagato and Konan? What's going on? That kind of thing. Let's talk about it later. Yamashita said. Pain, or Nagato, everything we said just now is true. Given our relationship, I have no need to lie to you. The current ninja world is indeed facing the greatest threat in history and needs your help. Pain was stunned for a moment after his identity was exposed. Then he looked at Uzumaki Naruto, who had not figured out the situation, and said, if that person's goal is this child, then extracting the 9 tails from him should be a good idea, right? As he spoke, his momentum changed, and a huge pressure rushed straight towards Naruto. The next moment, Sasuke stood in front of Naruto, blocking all the pressure. He looked at him with a frosty face, and his hand was already on the hilt of the sword at his waist, as if he was going to draw the sword and chop him up the next moment. A strong wind blew, revealing Sasuke's left eye that was blocked by his hair. It was an eye with a circle of spiral patterns and 6 megatoma. Pain's pupils shrank, and his heart was already in turmoil. He was too familiar with this eye, because he had a pair of them himself. Why do people have eyes like his own? Could it be that this person really came from the future, as Yamashita Kenji said? Nagato, I know you. We are old acquaintances. I used to be your subordinate. Sasuke said coldly, although I don't know what you have become in this world. If you still have such an idea, then there is no need, because in our world, your plan will be a complete failure. Pain narrowed his eyes, as if he wanted to see through the man in front of him, and said, really? Why should I believe you? With my strength, I can completely crush you. There is no need to deceive you at all. Sasuke's words were not polite at all, full of contempt and disdain for the other party. Obviously, he still cared a lot about the other party's attempt to attack Naruto just now. Moreover, although the words were not pleasant to hear, what he said was the truth. Now, even Uchiha Madara with a pair of reincarnation eyes could not beat Uchiha Sasuke in his perfect state, let alone the sick Nagato in front of him. However, although Sasuke was telling the truth, it was obviously unacceptable to Nagato. He still wanted to be the best in the ninja world, and called himself a god. How could he stand being looked down upon by others? Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Several sounds of breaking through the air were heard, and several pains gathered at this place, staring at him eagerly. Is that so? It seems that you are very confident in your own strength. Then, let me do it. Okay, you two wait a moment. Yamashita Kenji interrupted directly. I'm not interested in watching you two duel here. Nagato, I'm not saying anything bad about you, but you're a midterm boss. Why are you competing with a complete protagonist? Aren't you looking for a fight? Do you really think you're invincible with a pair of Rinnegan? Don't you think about what your original form is like now? Are you sure you can fight with others at a high intensity? And you, Sasuke, you're so old. Are you still as irritable as a child? Think about why you came here. If you fight Nagato now, even if you can win, won't it take a lot of energy? If that guy takes advantage of the situation, won't you be passive? We are here to find help, not to fight. Sasuke looked at Yamashita Kenji, who was trying to smooth things over in front of him, then looked at Six Paths Pain, snorted, and then left with Naruto and Boruto. Only Pain, Six Paths, Jiraiya, and Yamashita Kenji were left on the field. Seeing that Sasuke didn't care much, Yamashita was relieved. This guy was not so easy to talk to, and being able to persuade the other party directly was also a result of his eloquence and talent. Then, he looked at Six Paths Pain and said, Nagato, what I said before is true. Given the relationship between the two of us, there is no need to deceive you. Besides, although Sasuke is harsh in his words, what he said is true. Your plan is not feasible. Not to mention how long your high pressure rule can last. Just say that those ambitious people hidden in the dark side of the ninja world in the Otsutsuki clan who are eyeing you in outer space are not something you can deal with. Even if you really become the Jinchuriki of the Ten Tails, it is unlikely that you can do such a thing on your own. Yamashita was stunned when he said this, and then he started to think. Speaking of the tailed beasts, they are indeed more powerful in the early stage of the comics, but the later the tailed beasts are, the less effective they are, especially in the later stage. The effect is even lower. Basically they can only serve as tools to clear miscellaneous soldiers, and they are almost useless on high-end battlefields. However, the Ten Tails formed by the fusion of these 9 guys is different. It can directly raise a person's strength to the level of the Six Paths. Even if it is a gap with the top ninjas such as the Six Paths Sage and Kaguya Otsutsuki, it is not far behind. So, is it possible for him to collect all the tailed beasts, fuse them into the Ten Tails, and then become its Jinchuriki? In this case, wouldn't the ninja world be equivalent to having an extra Six Paths level combat power? At that time, wouldn't it be more comfortable to face the invaders of the Otsutsuki clan who have an average Six Paths combat power? It seems to be a good idea to recycle the tailed beasts that are not up to standard in the later period. Chapter 74, Accepting Nagato. Although the Jinchuriki will lose his life after losing the tailed beast, in fact, from the performance in the comics, this is not an iron rule. If the vitality of the Jinchuriki is strong enough, he can keep his life. With the strength of their company, it is relatively simple to develop something that replenishes the vitality of the human body. No, in fact, they have already developed it. Temporarily suppressing his thoughts, Yamashita continued to say to Pain in front of him, in short, your plan is completely unworkable. I have tried it for you another time and space. I was thinking about when to tell you and persuade you. Now that I have the opportunity, I will tell you directly. Pain looked at the other party's solemn promise and fell silent. If everything the other party said was true, then what is his life? Is what he has been pursuing all along meaningless? Okay, you don't have to think too much. Yamashita interrupted Nagato's emo and said soothingly, you don't have to feel that your life is so bleak and everything you have done is worthless. At least, isn't the change in the Rain Country all because of you? Now the children of the Rain Country will no longer be poor and suffer from wars like you did before. Isn't all this what you have fought for? Now, foreign enemies are invading, and all you have to do is to protect this beauty and peace. Am I wrong? Nagato was stunned, and then recalled everything that had happened before. It turned out that he had almost fulfilled Yahiko's ideal without realizing it. Of course, it was also his own ideal. In this way, it seems that what he did was not useless. His heart gradually became firm, and Pain said to Yamashita, so, Mr. Yamashita, what should I do? Yamashita smiled. At this point, Nagato's fighting power was actually not important. He had dispelled the other party's idea and almost put the other party in his pocket. This was already the biggest benefit he had gained in this incident. First of all, what you have to do is to restore your weak body to vitality. As a member of the Uzumaki clan, it is a bit too outrageous that you can't move on your own. Pain was stunned. You even know this? Yamashita smiled. Otherwise, how can I say that I know you better than anyone in this ninja world? Nagato, this guy, because his legs were burned by the explosive flame formation when he was surrounded by Hanzo, and because of repeated use of the outer path demon statue, his foundation was damaged, so he made himself look like this. If he wanted to heal him, it was not complicated. He could stop feeding the outer demon statue and replenish its lost essence. At least he could make him look like a human. His company had many similar studies. Apart from anything else, Yamashita estimated that Orochimaru's project team could complete such treatment, so he never doubted whether he could treat Nagato. Without further ado, Yamashita followed Pain to the hiding place under Yamashita, ready to take the other party's body back to the company directly for a comprehensive physical examination, and then think about other things. However, he did not expect that at this time, something went wrong in the Rain Country. Boom. A huge explosion sounded, and a huge explosion occurred somewhere in the capital of the Rain Country. From the smoke and dust of the explosion, a woman flew out. It was Konan, who was working in the office. Her whole body seemed to be made of paper, turning into wings, and flying in the sky, looking seriously at a figure floating in the sky in the distance. Who are you? Konan looked at the other party with some caution. The attack just now was definitely not something that ordinary people could do. The guy in front of him was definitely not an ordinary person. It turns out to be a beautiful lady. This is really a bit rude. The man said very politely. The aura is clearly here. Did I make a mistake? But it doesn't matter. They should be around here, right? As he said that, the other party gently swung the fishing rod in his hand, and the fishing line was thrown out and shot out like a bullet. Xiaonan looked serious and dodged in the air, but she didn't expect that the fish hook turned in the air and attacked Xiaonan's back directly from behind, pulling out a ball of pink light from her body. Whoosh! The fish hook was retracted, and the other party took the ball of light from the pre-order, weighed it in his hand, and said with a smile, "The amount is not bad. It's a good fish." As he said that, he put the ball of light into the fish basket behind him. On the other side, Xiaonan felt that most of the chakra in her body had left her body, and she couldn't even maintain her current state, and fell directly from the sky. So, ants who haven't learned to walk yet, don't fly. Now you're going to be smashed into a pulp. What a pity, what a pity. Although the man said this, he didn't make any moves, just watching the other person fall. Whoosh. At this moment, a man rushed over, caught the falling Xiaonan in midair, and settled her down properly, saying, "Arrange for the residents in the city to take refuge." Then, he flew into the sky again, confronting the guy in front of him from a distance. "Are you the member of the Otsutsuki clan from outer space that Mr. Yamashita and the others mentioned?" "Otsutsuki Urashiki?" Tendo Pain's voice was cold, and it was obvious that the guy in front of him had touched his reverse scale. Seeing the person coming, the originally gentle Otsutsuki Urashiki also changed his expression, and suddenly became serious, narrowed his eyes, and there was anger between his eyebrows. "Rinnegan? How come you, a lowly ant, have a Rinnegan?" Pain was stunned, and then he actually laughed. "Really? Could it be that this Rinnegan is the proof of your noble status as an ant of your Otsutsuki clan? Then, if this proof appears on me, an ant as you call it, what does your clan itself mean? A bigger ant? You sound very arrogant. Is it those eyes that give you the confidence?" Otsutsuki Urashiki's aura emanated, and the tremendous pressure directly attacked Pain. "If that's the case, then I will let you know what a terrible price you will pay for insulting the Otsutsuki clan." Chapter 75 Terrible Enemy. As soon as the words fell, Otsutsuki Urashiki threw the fishing rod in his hand, and countless fish hooks scattered from it, rushing directly towards Pain. "Shinra Tensei." A cold voice came out of Pain's mouth, and then a repulsive force was generated out of thin air, and all the fish hooks attacking him were bounced away. TSK, the pupil technique of the Rinnegan? It's just a guy who stole the power of the Otsutsuki clan by luck. Urashiki looked at his fish hook being bounced away, and said with an unhappy face, "Really? Then what about this trick?" Pain said, waving his right hand, and an irresistible gravitational force came out. 10,000 things heaven attraction. Urashiki's figure flew towards Pin involuntarily, and then Shirado Pin, who had been prepared on the ground, directly fired a powerful energy cannon, which directly bombarded the guy. You sound impressive, but that's all. Tendo Pain said calmly. He didn't expect that he could easily solve this so-called alien. It seems that Mr. Yamashita was a little alarmist. I say, where are you looking? Suddenly, Tendo Pain heard a familiar voice behind him. Before he could react, he felt that the chakra in his body was directly drawn out of his body. Even if he resisted, it was useless. How is it possible? Tendo Pain seemed to have lost his vitality and lost all his chakra. Then, Urashiki waved his hand and cut him in half. That's all. It's just average. As expected, ants are ants. Even if they are lucky enough to get the power of gods, they are still ants. Urashiki, who appeared in the sky again, put the chakra in his hand into the fish basket and said to himself. Nagato, who was secretly controlling Pin, was horrified at this moment. He couldn't believe that his heavenly path Pin was killed by the other party. This gap can no longer be described as a gap in strength. The two seem to be not on the same level. More importantly, his six paths Pin actually shares the perspective and can share perspectives with each other. In the hidden place, there are at least 3 Pins waiting for an opportunity, quietly watching everything that happened on the battlefield just now. However, even so, the other person still went behind Heavenly Path Pin. Not only Heavenly Path Pin, but also the other Pins didn't find it. Why? Before Nagato could think clearly about the means used by the other party at that time, the guy started to move again and began to encircle and suppress his Pin puppets. The strongest Pin had been killed by the other party. Although the others had their own abilities, they were really not good enough for the other party. It didn't take long for them to be killed by the other party. This gap in strength. Is this what Mr. Yamashita said, the biggest crisis that the ninja world is facing? In comparison, what the ninja world is suffering now is really just a small fight. This battle destroyed all of Nagato's pride as a god and made him deeply realize how insignificant he was. On the other side, Urashiki, after killing the last Pain puppet, took back the chakra into the fish basket and said with a smile, "And thank you for your hospitality. The quality of your chakra is really good. But it seems that these guys are all your puppets, right? Then, let me see where your real body is." As he said that, veins suddenly appeared in the opponent's eye sockets, and his Byakugan was activated. In his perspective, all obstacles were no longer obstacles. He could completely pass those objects to explore the guy he was looking for. Oh, it turns out that he is hiding there. Otsutsuki Urashiki seemed to have seen the existence of Nagato and was about to go directly over, but suddenly a figure flashed behind him. Sasuke did not hesitate at all and directly slashed behind him with a sword. Clang! When the sword was chopped down, there was no sound of the blade entering the flesh. Instead, Urashiki's entire body disintegrated directly, turning into pink butterflies, flying in the sky. Is it this kind of substitution technique again? Sasuke retracted his sword and looked in one direction. There, Urashiki's figure appeared, slightly raised his head, looked at Sasuke in front of him, and said, "Oh, are you finally willing to show up? What, you, the defeated general, have you forgotten the embarrassment in my hands before? Have you found a way to deal with me?" Sasuke narrowed his eyes, and his main Gekyo and Samzara eyes opened at the same time. The whole person's momentum was condensed, ready to go, and it seemed that he was about to rush forward in the next moment. "Why, do you want to use ninjutsu? What about your Amaterasu fire? I hope you haven't forgotten that all your so-called ninjutsu are completely useless to me." Urashiki still looked very relaxed, as if the person in front of him was not that difficult for him to deal with. "Thanks for the reminder. I still remember the lesson." As soon as Sasuke finished speaking, his figure disappeared from the opponent's sight and appeared directly behind the opponent. The long sword in his hand was wrapped with sharp lightning chakra and attacked. Heavenly hand force. Urashiki was naturally not a person who could be dealt with so easily. His physical skills were also very powerful. In addition, he had basically figured out Sasuke's routine, so he was able to deal with it with ease. The fishing rod in his hand was also swung open and closed, fighting Sasuke on equal terms. No, it seemed that Sasuke was in a state of rage. Feeling the huge power coming from the knife, Sasuke's palm was numb. The guy in front of him was so powerful that he felt like he was facing Naruto's fist. These guys' bodies are really abnormal. Hahaha, the warm-up is over. Break it. Suddenly, Otsutsuki Arashiki exerted force, and the fishing rod in his hand smashed down like a hammer. Sasuke couldn't dodge in time, so he could only use the ninja sword to block it. However, with a crisp sound, the ninja sword in Sasuke's hand, which was blessed by chakra, was directly broken. Go to hell, you guy. Facing Sasuke, this guy didn't have any idea of holding back. Of course, he didn't have the ability to do so, so this time, he was completely deadly and hit Sasuke on the head. Boom. A thunderous sound broke through the sky, the ground cracked inch by inch, houses collapsed piece by piece, groundwater gushed out from under the ground, smoke and dust were stirred, a scene of doomsday. This attack almost destroyed most of the towns in the Rain Country. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.